We took and put a TV camera under two of the greens into the drainage
No, I
system.
guess the question I have,
Dry as a
you
bone.
can answer maybe.
No water is going down, so we did a couple of splits. We did a couple of split spoon samples. We have layers about that thick
This is on.
of like a mucky material. It's just,
It's
like it's perched.
Fiscal year 2006.
Not clay, but it's close to it. When you take it and grab it, we dug down an 8-inch diameter hole, got down about 7 inches. I grabbed it and squeezed it. You know, sand is dry, they fall apart.
There was.
This
work that was
stayed
done
like
on
a
requisition.
clay dough ball.
Nothing
And the water won't go through it.
I'm aware. We checked the information from the requisitions.
Clay.
Last
like that,
requisition
that's right,
was
yeah.
2014.
And it goes to the water. It's-
You want to take a look at it?
Yeah, double
It is
check,
a
and I
nice-
would
it's kinda like clay.
NA and initialize it if you want.
Something has to do with just it stays wet.
It goes back on the
It'll cut back irrigation on that side. I mean,
Thank you.
try that.
was
I
reading.
thought maybe it's irrigation.
Okay, it's 3:00. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. If anybody has cell phones, please turn them on silent. And let's say the pledge of allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'm gonna assume we have people signed
We have
up to
two.
speak, okay?
First up is Flavia Walsh from Magnolia Lakes. Wants to talk about bonds, littoral, and washout repairs.
Hi everyone, Flavia Walsh. I'm the HOA president for Magnolia Lakes. I kind of just wanted to follow up on the last meeting that we had. I had the pleasure to actually walk the pond yesterday with Margaret to go over the washouts that we have currently at Magnolia Lakes. I was able to forward some emails. I also printed some that I think they're crucial for the board to get a fast understanding on our situation at Magnolia Lakes. What is really what we're asking for is for the board to take action and go ahead and with the repairs at our pond. I know you guys received multiple quotes to repair the pond over the years. The pond is just deteriorating extremely fast rate. We, as the HOA, are suffering because we are having to pay extra for things that are breaking due to the algae that's not being controlled at Magnolia Lakes. Like I mentioned last meeting, we had 3 fountains that needed to be replaced. 2 actually completely burned out because of the algae. And my last one that was just turned on, I just did get an email from Aquagenics that also serves my fountain that says it was on for 4 days and they don't know what's wrong, but it's clogged with algae. I went back and I did look at emails. Jeff didn't know in one of the emails that our pond was not on the program, on the list, on the top of the list of priorities for restoration. But his recommendation at that time, and that was August of 2015, was for the board or somebody else to advise and look over that list because he didn't think at that point that our pond could wait any longer to have washouts and repairs done. We don't have much of an erosion problem, maybe 2 or 3 spots, but the washouts are significantly. From last meeting to today, we had an increase on algae. Algae growth, we are actually having a different type of algae that we had before. I haven't seen any treatments or anything haven't done this week, so I'm really wanted to ask the board to really consider that last estimate that was given and go ahead and take a vote on repairing our washouts. That's number 1. Number 2, I wanted to talk about the reimbursement for the FP&L account. I know I was looking for the last 10 years for reimbursement on that account that we've been paying. That is not our responsibility. Unfortunately, FP&L can only go back 2 years. So I have provided all the information from FP&L, what we have. But I think it's fair to not wait any longer because 10 years is a long time to calculate that and issue the HOA a refund check. And also, like we mentioned, switch those aerators to a separate meter and not to be on the HOA's meter. So those are the two items that I have. Does anybody have any questions?
Just real quick, so with the lakes, the primary concern, it sounds like, is the algae that's causing immediate issues with the aerators.
Not with the aerators, with fountains.
Aerators, it's fountains.
We have
Fountains.
two main issues. We have washouts,
Yeah, but I'm saying that.
and then we have the fountains that are getting clogged due to the fact of the quantity of algae that we're having at that pond. To the washouts, I did brought to the board last meeting that within 1 year, in a few days, the quantity of the washouts double. It went from, I believe, 23 to 46 or 44 in 1 year. And those reports, for them from two different companies from the CDD.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Flavia, do you have easements? Your HOA have easement access rights of, say, 7.5 feet on every property on the sides. But let's say if we would go and put a drain inlet from the pond up to the backside of the LME and then provide 2 taps there, would the property owners, is there a way that you could get the property owners to take the water that now is sheeting down, and I saw your washouts, so I know what you got, to get them to tie into those to eliminate this problem? Do you have the power to do that?
Yes, we do. I don't know all the easements that we have, but my residents are, we're all on the same page with this. We've been seeing the deterioration on that pond for years. And the last, years now, it's just.
Because the last thing I want to do is to put in a drain inlet at the common property line 20 feet back or on the edge of the LME, and then not have the physical characteristics of the swale that feeds that, and it goes around that deal, and it washes it out again.
Which we kind of saw that.
Which means then that they could either do it with piping that goes to an actual gutter and take away the majority of that water, or they'd have to reshape the ditch between their property lines, and getting 2 property owners to agree to pay the money to do that, I don't think that's gonna happen. Then the second thing is for Danny. Danny, I don't recall, was 83 on the original 15?
It's in phase 3.
Phase 3.
I looked that up yesterday.
So then the only way that we could incorporate that into any project for reimbursement with SRF would have to amend the facility plan. Is that correct?
Yes.
How easy of a task is that? Or how difficult of a task is that?
Danny Nelson for the record, Tetra Tech. It's not a difficult task. It's a time consuming, even if you wanted to add one, simply because you've got to go through the process of modifying the report. You got to go back through the public hearing process here. You got to then send that to DEP. They then have to review that. They have 45 days, which is what it typically takes. Then it has to go back through their public hearing for approval. So that's just to allow it to be on the design side. And then you got to go back through that process for the construction side again. So just adding one lake, the time it would take to modify the report, might be 2 weeks. But the time to actually get it into that queue and approved by SRF might be 6 months.
Well, the reason I brought it up is because right now we have the 5 ponds identified for part 1 of phase 1. So this would fall into part 2, and we're looking at doing that next.
Well, and if,
So it would be timely, but, and I don't think I want to take and go and say, well, I'm going to take pond 129 and take them out. I'd just easier put in 83 and add it, and then just have it as inclusive on the next design and project. So I guess the question is has DEP or SRF seen an identification or breakdown of our 3 phases that would say why?
No,
Why are
that-
you doing this?
No, they've just seen the.
Just the first 15?
Just the first
13,
15.
13.
13. But,
Okay.
I mean, what I would say is if that's something that the board wants to consider, I would not recommend modifying the facilities plan for a single lake. You would do it for all three of the phases, or those phases may even be modified at this point, because that's Lake 83, I think. I mean, that's gotten worse. Others might not have, so that may, move up. But the other part is, and if the board recalls, when we originally considered doing or preparing the facilities plan, it was intended to be more encompassing, to cover things like aeration. And, the board said, no, we're just gonna focus on the lake banks. I'm not saying you change that, but if you do want to consider modifying it, you don't have to do anything that's in the facilities plan, but you can't do anything that's outside of the facilities plan.
Yeah, I wasn't looking at anything other than lake bank restoration, which would be inclusive of putting in the drains. And I walked that the last time Elle and I took samples 2 weeks ago, and they don't have the escarpment. They have it in a couple of places, which is minimal. Their real issue is what Flavia just described, where it's the washout. But any way we go, in order to get SRF monies to use for it, they have to be included in an approved facilities plan, as I understand.
Yes, and right now that the lake bank stabilization is really defined in that report. And that really, if the majority of the issues are associated with washouts, that would be covered by potentially putting some inlets and doing some, resloping around that. That's not even, currently in this report for any of the lakes.
What I was looking at is a way of, what's the right word, politically correct word, masquerading it, is that we do lake bank restoration, maybe 20 feet both sides of the center line of a common property line, so as to make sure that if this is not totally effective, we aren't gonna have a further deterioration. So you still could get it into the concept of a lake bank. But the bottom line is, as I understand it, until it's in the SRF line queue, it ain't gonna get funded.
If you want to use SRF funds, I mean,
Yeah.
if this has reached the point where it's escalated and needs to be addressed, then, those are your options. To modify the facilities plan and go after funding that way, or to find the funds elsewhere.
My concern on opening that can of worms is that if we take one out of line, pay for it without SRF money, and you've got people on other ponds that are in phase 2, phase 3, the line will start at the door. And I don't think we want that. I'd much rather take and do the amendment to the facility plan and put it in if indeed it's of that nature, that it's moved from the priority that it was originally given up to a higher priority.
Well, I would suggest that if you did that you look at all of the lakes again and see, and then
Cover
actually.
yourself.
Yeah, because I was going to ask, what was the date that we
2
did-
years ago.
2 years ago. So there could have been some significant change in the past 2 years. So
I think all the lakes have probably
Yeah.
changed significantly in the last 2 years,
I mean,
so.
I think what I heard from Danny is we proceed with phase 1, part 1, do a reevaluation. I mean, we already know 83 is one that would probably need to be on that list. We may have to do a complete resequencing of prioritization based on current state. But that's definitely something that we should look at. As far as the algae that's creating fountain clogs, I mean, should.
Water quality in the last 2 month periods, I don't know if you've seen it, that water quality's been good. Water quality's been good, but that's not necessarily representative of the algae.
No, my memory is this one always had some level of algae issues.
It has no basically water introduced to it.
Nothing moving.
Other than what
So it
falls in off the houses, that's it.
So it just stays.
It stays there, stays there. It's got a very high outlet elevation so as to keep the wetland that's to the north of Pond 83 theoretically wet.
Yep.
And it never should have been designed that way.
Now, one thing.
It is what it is.
Back to the washouts. If there are consistent washouts, and I know a year ago or 2 years ago there were 23 and they've doubled, but you know, Gateway was at least doing washout repairs. So if there are washout repairs that need to be made, that doesn't mean we can't go and do those if we have the budget to do, you know, isolated items. I'm not necessarily saying you correct 46 at this point if they're major, but
Well,
it's an
And
option.
that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see if we've got a price for how much it would be to fix the washouts. Do we have that funding in the budget? I mean, I don't think this is something we can really vote on today, but I'd like to bring this back to the next meeting with some ideas of how we can get some work done on that
What,
way.
what
I agree.
budget? What budget?
That's what I'm saying. We put money in for repairs. It's not like everything has to be done with SRF money. So, I mean, we need to even be, the lakes that have been completed, which, what are the lake numbers that have been completed?
Completed 104, 5, 6,
6,
7, 8, yeah.
So we need to actually go back and look at those and make sure we don't have any areas that we need to fix now. We should be monitoring what we're repairing to make sure that if we need to.
Yeah, I keep a close eye on those, and for the most part, with the exception of 104, we're gonna go back in here in a couple of weeks and start
Right.
on it. 6, 7, and 8 look great.
Yeah.
There's a couple of places where we got some Playcoats that got up underneath the fabric, but for the most part, it's in pretty good shape. My thought was to add 83 to phase 1 and be done with it, but the more I think about it, we made a cost estimate of $6 million based on 13 ponds, not 14.
Well, and I think too, what you run into is, if I'm understanding you, Ed, that the SRF scope and for restoration versus washout, some of the repairs that 83 needs is not what we had necessarily documented. So what I would look to do is define scope for SRF funding and the lake bank restoration, and then have another, you know, kind of bucket of washout or just what we would consider general maintenance, and then have a prioritization or some type of qualification to use that funding. If let's say 83 had, you know, washout and lake bank and several things, if it was to the point where it falls outside of what we could fund, then it would have to fall into SRF within the sequence.
Well, 83 definitely has lake bank restoration needs. It's just nowhere
But can
near
we
as
split,
large
but could
as
we
others.
split it out and say there's general maintenance that needs to happen maybe today, or, you know, in the
And
short
then
term?
address the others later.
And then address the other, and I think at least we're taking action.
That means
As
somebody's
long as
gotta-
it's not counterproductive, where we're doing the one thing and then the lake bank would, you know, would cause issues down the line.
That means somebody needs to go around.
There was
and,
budget previously for some maintenance type restoration. I don't know if the
Right.
budget's still.
And again, if
There or not.
HOA start to line up and say, hey, we have general maintenance that falls out of lake bank, well, we're gonna have to prioritize those and kind of fund them as they come in until we run out of money, and then we'll have to rebudget and reprioritize as we move forward.
And that's what I'd like to have come back to the next meeting is an idea of how we can get some repair work done on Lake 83.
But did you say you had an estimate? You had an idea?
I've seen it, yeah.
And where did
I
the
don't
estimate
have
come
it
from?
today. It came from, it's a company that's been working in.
Copperline, I think, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and kind of to go back, as far as I know, and looking at the records, the repairs were only the somewhat repairs that were done only once. And kind of the general repairs here and there. Originally, there were only 8 washouts, and I submitted that. They went there. They said, you know what? We're gonna go next week. We're gonna fix those 8 repair. That never happened for 2 years, and I have emails after emails. Never happened. Then from 8 went to 23.
Flavia, they who? Us?
You guys, yes. And then I have dates. At the 20th of April, the 2014, they'll be doing this one, this one, this one, this one. They never showed up. They never did it. The only thing that they did is when they did the 23, they did half of it. And I believe at that point was Scott, and that's the email. It says, due to budget funds, we're only gonna do the half of it. And like I mentioned, the half that was done, I'm no engineer, but it's been a year and it's horrible.
Does anybody know who did that?
Yeah,
Who-
Manny.
Oh, Manny did that work?
And I understand your frustration. Give us just a little bit more
Okay.
time, because we understand. I've been out there and I've looked at it, and I agree with you that there some of them are really bad that need to be repaired. We just need to figure out how we're gonna do it, but we're not gonna ignore this.
Okay, no problem. What I'll do is I'll just give you, I printed just some that I think emails that I want you guys to take a look at it, and I'll give it to April. I do have like over 300 pictures, so I'll put it in a drive and I'll drop it and you guys can visit it, and it's by year.
Margaret,
so you
and
can
that,
see it.
one of the issues, the second point she made can be taken care of quickly, and we looked at it when we were doing the sampling again. All we need to do is get FPL out there and set a separate meter base and get those two separated right now. And we let it go for 1 month or 2 months period to collect the data of with the meters separated and apply the differential to the credit, and we're done.
And
Be so easy to
Kristen,
do.
Have we set up to put a second meter box out there, or?
Yes, that's what
April?
Is that a yes?
When will that be done, do we know?
April White, your business manager. I basically took your direction from the last board meeting and we started implementing that, and Elle's working on getting the meter, a new meter service. We don't have an end date. We can't do the refund until we do the new meter service because I don't have an end date.
And I understand that, but I was just asking the question, do we know when that meter change?
We don't have it scheduled yet, but she's reaching out to the vendor to go out there and look at that.
To FPL?
No, it'll be our vendor. It'll be our vendor, Bentley.
We set the post,
Bentley
they
usually
come in and
puts our
put the meter
services
in.
up.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
It's so simple, it's unbelievable.
Yeah, and we were just going to first run the calculation at an estimated monthly cost and extend it out. Elle's been working on it, extend it out over the entire time period. And if it's a material amount, then we'll bring it back to the board just to make sure that we bless it and approve it, but we wasn't going to overcomplicate the calculation.
Okay, gotcha.
But we're working on it.
You have a comment?
Bob Geppert from Pelican Preserve and the Ponds Group. And I would just like to share something, because what I'm hearing is the discussions that we had in 2012. And the one comment relative to washouts is if you don't fix the root cause, which is the water coming off the homes and putting it into piping and piping it to the pond, you'll be a cat chasing your tail forever. We went through this and we realized the money we spent in 12 was gone in 14. To that end, the board has already approved money for us to do our first neighborhood, Valentino and Tiberio, and Tony is in the final stages of blessing it. We got all the covenantal type things resolved, and that's going to be our pilot neighborhood. So I would just offer that to anybody that wants to see what we think the ideal would look like and what is our current engineering spec for new permits, that we will have that probably at the end of the first quarter.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Ask
And-
David one question. Dave, did you all have, or Bob, did you have a commonality easement that the HOA has between the property lines?
Yes and no.
So
There's
it
a
gives
number of.
little more power.
Yes, Tony is telling us right now that the Master Association covenants gives us the authority to do it. We've held a number of meetings with the residents and the resident HOA, and the HOA of that area wrote a specific document granting us the authority.
Well, that's why I brought that issue up. We put in that, we spend the money to run that pipe from the lake up through the LME to the end, put in the overflow box or the box, and then have two pipes going out of it. If the two property owners don't come to that, you might be just whistling Dixie.
Well,
You
we're
didn't
not
save
going to,
anything.
what we told the Pelican neighborhoods is if they don't sign up to do their share as we see it, then we're not going to spend money. We'll go to the next neighborhood that wants it. That's kind of where we're at. But I totally agree with you. It's wasted money if the whole neighborhood doesn't buy in.
That may be what we do is send Flavia out to get the common property lines of all the washouts to get them to consent to agree first.
Yeah,
Because if we
we're
do
actually
the other-
beyond looking at individual washouts. If they're on the pond, they're in the program, or they're not. Every home, even if it doesn't have a washout, has got to join this program if they're on a pond.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Bob. I'm gonna move
Yeah,
us
that's
on
okay.
to,
That's
because
good.
we got other people that want to speak.
Yes, next up is John Heck. Let's talk about the Gateway High School.
There is one.
Good afternoon. I just wanted to kind of brief the board on what's going on with the current high school that Lee County is building. I don't know how familiar you are with the project, but last Wednesday I attended a construction committee meeting for the upcoming build of the new high school in Lee County. And as you may know, the committee will be deciding between two Lee County School Board-owned sites. One of these sites is right here in Gateway. It's a 55-acre parcel on State Road 82 and Griffin Road. The other site is 101 acres purchased to be a two-school site in Alva off of Joel Boulevard. The minimum size to build a school, according to the school board, is 40 acres, so either one of these sites would be adequate. The site that is not selected would remain in the district inventory with a third site for a future build in the east zone. The third site is a 100-acre parcel in Tice, but is not considered viable site at this particular time. The way I understand it, that there will be construction meetings open to the general public each month from February through May, and the construction committee has a lot of work ahead of them for sure. But they expect to make a decision between the two sites at the May meeting. The decision will be forwarded to the Lee County School District, and the district is expected to approve the site recommended by the construction committee by June of this year. Permitting is expected to follow immediately following that decision. The district plans to break ground on the new site in January 2018 and open for the 2019 school year. Both sites will be easy builds according to the construction committee in terms of site elevation and design of the school. The plans from the Bonita Springs High School that was recently opened are the same plans that they're going to use to build the next two schools. The expected estimated cost is about $350 million, and this would be a substantial boost, we believe, to the Gateway community in terms of quality of life as well as economically. So that's some of the good news. The bad news, however, is that the Alva community seems to be pretty well organized in favor of the school. Gateway is not, at least not yet. There were at least two Alva community organizations represented at the meeting I attended last week. There may have been a third, but I was the only person in attendance from Gateway. The Alva organizations are also talking with Bonita Springs residents and businesses neighboring the school, and they're soliciting ideas and information to help them advocate for the Alva site. I'm here today, obviously, in support of the school, and we're asking the district for a couple of things. Number one, we would like the Gateway Services District to consider publicly supporting this effort to bring this much-needed school to Gateway. We also ask that the district to assist us in hosting a town hall meeting, perhaps here at the district office, to kind of get the word out to the community, as well as to see what residents feel are the pros and cons of having such a school here in the community. And lastly, we believe it to be important to have someone from the district attend the next construction meeting on February 1st at 3 o'clock. This school will have a very big impact on the Gateway community as well as the surrounding areas, and it would certainly be beneficial to have somebody from the board at least proverbially at the table when some of these critical, impactful decisions are being debated at the committee. Also, you might be interested, in March, the committee will have a field trip for both sites. The public is welcome to attend. Our group does plan on being there. The date and time has not been made available, but it will likely be determined at the February meeting, and I would strongly encourage members of the board to join us in attending this event. Alva has already committed to doing just that. Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, John. Is this meeting on the 1st at 3 o'clock? That's Wednesday?
I don't have a calendar in front of me, but it's first.
It's a Wednesday.
That's a
Yeah.
construction meeting.
That's a
That's what I was
construction
gonna say.
meeting.
It's a construction meeting. I'd
Yeah.
certainly be interested, because I have a couple of concerns right now. I would guess beyond a shadow of a doubt that 82 being expanded to 6 lanes is not going to allow an ingress and egress to that school. which means it's gonna come off Griffin Drive.
Well, they mentioned that, and they said at this point, they really don't know how that's gonna shake out, but they are working with the Department of Highway that's working on that.
Because there's a stoplight gonna be there, and I can't picture two stoplights in 200 yards.
Yeah, and I think the point is, and like John, I have a little bit of a vested interest in the fact that I could send 3 kids to school there over the next however long. But I think what my position is, and even as a supervisor, I mean, we need to understand the impact that this school would have on our community, both positive and negative. And I would love for the board to be able to take a public stance in favor. But for me, I think having, members of the board and even Chris and members of staff attend these meetings would give us maybe a little bit more insight.
Credibility, too.
And even a seat at the table. And if it does look to where Gateway might be that selected area, we might be able to have influence on, the main access on 82, or, the placement of some of the facilities that we may have influence on. And the second part for the town hall, great opportunity, because if you don't understand where the negative or objections may come, then it's kind of hard for us to really address those and be stewards of the impact. I mean, traffic is probably the number one concern that
Sure.
what I've heard. I mean, cost, there's not, I mean, we don't have to pay for it, and the roads will probably be turned over to the county by then. But the traffic is something that would probably be a big concern. So I would like for us to have a seat at the table so we can either help influence or at least provide quality impact.
Traffic and drainage.
Yeah.
Mhm. Right.
Yeah, I don't have a conflict at that time for the 3 o'clock on the construction side of it.
Would we
That doesn't
want
bother me.
Chris?
Definitely Chris. Oh, yeah.
Chris, can you check your calendar, see if you can pull that off? Okay. And I don't know who else.
Where's that meeting? Where's the meeting at?
Kathy has comment. Let me let Kathy have a moment here.
Oh, thank you.
Go ahead.
I have heard about this, and I've had people talk to me already about, this high school, and there has been a positive. And they had asked me, and that was one of my things on my list for later, about how we would feel about the high school. I think it's a positive too. And, I don't think all of us can go to that February 1st meeting, but I'm sure that our chair could designate someone that would appropriately.
You bring up a very good point about, somebody asked you to maybe bring it up, at a later date. The fact of the matter is, they're gonna be deciding this in June, so there aren't too many later dates available. That's why I'm here today, to kind of stress the urgency of the fact that we've only got February, March, and April. May, they're gonna be making a decision, and June, they're sending it over to the board, and the board's gonna start the wheels in motion.
Well, I meant later.
Right.
today.
I understand. Okay.
It's, what I meant on my list.
I got
have
you.
a
All right.
list of questions.
Thank you. John, do you have a
Yes.
list of the pros and cons of having this school built at Griffin and 82?
The cons, let me start there. I mean, as far as I can see as a resident, the only thing or the biggest thing would be traffic, and how is that gonna be addressed? There is some room out there, I don't know, maybe if, widening that portion of the road to make Griffin a little bit more accessible in and out of a school like that. We already have a school on Griffin, and, everybody seems to manage okay. Drainage is something that the engineers.
There's a world of difference between an elementary school and a senior high
Sure,
school.
sure.
A world.
I understand. Yes, I understand. But from that perspective, those are the cons. The positive side of things is this. I spoke with a resident who's a friend of mine. She has two children in high school. She drives an hour and 15 minutes each, a round trip, twice a day, to drop her son off and pick him up from school. She works in Naples. She has another son that she sends to a school that the family's paying $18,000 a year for private schools. And trust me when I tell you, they're not a wealthy family by any stretch of the imagination. But there are very few, if any, acceptable alternatives to high school in this particular area, which is evident by the fact that the school district is looking to expand the high schools available. If you think about it, if you live in Gateway, oftentimes you work in Fort Myers or you work south of here in, Naples or Bonita Springs. And for example, to go to Lehigh would be even further out of that person's way. But there are hundreds of people just like her, that are doing something similar. And in speaking to many of those that I know personally, many of them would likely send those kids to a local school. So the quality of life issue that I mentioned before, that's a big one, because this one mother takes 2.5 hours out of her day just, transporting one child back and forth to school.
When you talk about quality of life issues and you use one example of one family, you can't extrapolate that to the entire community.
I'm
What
not.
you have to consider also is the number of teachers and their vehicles that are going to be coming into that school, the number of school buses that are going to be coming into that school. And, say again?
Teenage drivers.
Absolutely, teenage drivers. You're gonna have football stadium lights, and basketball in the evening. There's a whole world, that you need to take into consideration.
They actually address
before you come
that.
down on something like this.
Sure, they addressed that at the meeting, particularly the stadium lights. That was one issue that was a big issue in Bonita Springs. And I'm not expert on stadium lighting by any means, but they use some sort of lighting down there, according to the gentleman who was running the construction meeting, that you can't really see as you're approaching. And now people are complaining that they can't see it because that's how they would find previous schools, is they would look for the lights in the sky. So
You can't please
you
everybody.
can't please everybody. That's right.
Margaret, couple of questions still. Or let Bill, you
I'm
do.
finished, thank you.
Is this gonna be an IB program school?
That I don't know.
'Cause to me, that'd be critical. Because right now, my son had to go, and then we had to drive to Riverdale.
Riverdale.
It has a pain in the,
And
you know what?
Riverdale's probably the only,
It's the only, there's only like 3 in all of the district.
And I think Riverdale might be the only school that, is it a B, Riverdale an A or a B school, do you know?
I'm not
But it's one
sure.
of the few, our East Zone doesn't have,
Right.
So that would
very
be
good
critical to me,
reputation
is that
for a
it would
school.
be
And
a
that's,
IB
and that would be
program.
a great question for the committee. That's why I'm here today, maybe, because you guys would have questions that I didn't think of, then that's definitely one of them.
Then on the other side, from the construction perspective of drainage, this could be a positive. We need water in Magnolia Lakes. The large wing of that piece of property up there, you can see it in turquoise blue. It looks like a piece of pie. One whole side of the pie borders up against Magnolia Lakes. It would be nice if a portion of
Tie
that
into
water
it.
could come into Magnolia Lakes, so we could have a flow through Magnolia Lakes. So
it's a
from
shame
that side,
Flavia left because
so from that perspective, it would be advantageous.
Yeah.
The other concern is that
Where'd she go?
we gotta figure out a way to get that water across Griffin Drive. But right now, I don't know, and Danny may know, I have no idea that the Hampton Park system, which is the only other available system to get rid of the water, has the wherewithal. He's shaking his head, tells me that it doesn't have a way to get out of there. So drainage is gonna be an issue, but it could be a positive issue for us, especially to the residents of Magnolia Lakes. So I'd be more than happy to go to
I
that
think
meeting.
we've got a couple people that are, willing to go to the meeting and bring back more information to the board, and you're certainly willing to bring back more information.
Where is the
So
meeting?
Thank you for.
You're welcome. The meeting, I'll get you the actual address. It's off of Veronica Shoemaker. Let's see if I have I don't
Is
think
that
I.
the school board?
Yes, it is. It's at a school board office there. I can't recall the address, but I can get it to you.
No big deal.
And there's no objections with us using our facility and publicizing a town hall. Is my,
Let's start with the first meeting, the February 1st meeting with the constructing information, and have that come back to us, and then we can talk about, what we want to do as far as the town.
How soon you wanting a town hall meeting?
I would say the sooner the better, the sooner we can get the word out, but your idea is a very good one. Let's get you guys involved and get you
Just
to
we
the
can have a
meeting.
way.
Right, exactly.
And there-
We're talking, that meeting's coming up quickly.
and I think there's
Right.
also, I believe Rob had, or someone in the community had a petition, and I think there was already hundreds of names on the petition in favor. So there is a lot of talk. It's just not,
Right.
it's not centralized, and
That's
there's
right.
not a movement or, any type of group, and I think we really need to make sure that we hear all the issues so we can have a seat at the table and talk about those. So,
Thank you.
thanks, John.
Thank you very much.
And Tony, let me ask you, since two supervisors have expressed an opinion of wanting to attend this meeting, is that possible? Since it's an open meeting
Where's it going to be held?
at the school?
Sounds like the school board offices.
What I would suggest, if they are to attend, that we put a notice out that 2 board members will be attending that for observation purposes only, I take it, and no interaction among the board members.
Why
Could be
would you say
interaction
that?
with the
That's gonna be
public,
a
but I don't know
public
about the
meeting of a
board members.
public body.
Right, but there can't be any interaction among the 2 supervisors unless we notice it as a meeting of this board.
We're not gonna vote
Well,
whether
let's
or
just-
not to build a school. I mean, we're not
Oh,
part
I-
of the decision-making process of where the school goes.
Well, I understand, but
Having the
you
discussion.
still
with-
be, yeah.
Participating in the deal, as long as you're not participating with each other.
Responding
is
to
not
each
a
other's
violation.
comments or
Yeah,
questions, am
yeah,
I?
Yeah, that's
Gotcha.
what you gotta avoid.
Okay.
I think if, I'm fine with Ed going, and probably Chris, just from their engineering background, to look at some of the construction and things of that nature. I mean, I know people that are going that will be speaking in favor and documenting information that we can bring back. So, I mean, I'm fine with that if no one else.
Well, Kathy
Oh,
said
Kathy
that Kathy expressed that she'd like to go too.
But if there's a problem,
I don't think there's a problem.
I don't think
Well,
there's a
we
problem.
just can't
All we
interact.
have to do is
Yeah.
notice it. You
Sit
just
at
can't
the-
talk to Ed.
Don't sit next to each other.
Don't
You
sit
just
next to
can't
each
talk
other.
to
I don't
Ed
know
or
her.
sit by him.
I don't think that'd be a problem.
I don't think it's an
If
issue.
we both would like to go, let's notice it and allow them both to go, because they may see things from a different.
What time do you want me to pick you up?
Tony
That's
just
fantastic.
Yeah,
failed.
Yeah.
There's a reason why we put you over here next to me.
Yeah. No, he's making sure I'm listening.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else?
Yes, we have one more. Ron Taratino would like to talk about fire consolidation.
She told me he was coming. Told me he was coming.
First, let me introduce myself. I live in Waterford. My name is Ron Tarantino. I am a fire commissioner for South Trail. I did have the opportunity to speak to most of you. The only gentleman I couldn't get a hold of was Mr. Banks. I did email each one of you the current bill that Representative Matt Caldwell had put out. He's looking at fire consolidation, and what he wants to do is take all 17 fire districts, including South Trail, and for the people that live in Pelican Preserve, the city of Fort Myers. He's included the city of Fort Myers and the city of Cape Coral in there, how he's going to incorporate 2 cities and consolidate and take their fire protection. We're not quite sure yet. Did anybody attend the
article.
delegation meeting?
There's a big article in the newspaper today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did anybody attend the delegation meeting this morning?
No, I had intended to, but I wasn't able to get there this morning. Did
Okay,
he
I was
speak
there.
on this?
I'm sorry?
Did he speak on this bill this morning?
Yes, it was going to go to a vote whether to go to the House and move forward. What transpired this morning was the opposition. There was a lot of people there, and there were a lot of people opposed to it. It was tabled, the bill was tabled until 2018. What they're going to do is next meeting, they're going to come up with 4 questions, straw poll questions that are probably going to go on the 2018 ballot, asking 4 different questions. Are you for consolidation if it increased taxes and lowered service? Are you for consolidation if it decreased taxes and lowered service? Are you for consolidation if it decreased taxes and improved service? And so on. So, my question when I spoke to you and I sent you guys the bill was, I was asking as a resident, if this bill moves forward, where Gateway stands on this, because we'll essentially lose South Trail Fire Rescue. I am a fire commissioner there. I'm also a fireman for 15 years, so I'm well familiar with the emergency services. If you read the bill, essentially what the bill does is if the bill gets passed and the vote goes to the voters and the voters are not informed, and everybody goes, oh yeah, consolidation, this is great, let's vote for it. What the bill says is if it gets passed, Lee County Fire District will be formed. They will come in, they will take all your assets, your fire stations, your fire trucks, all the equipment that people in South Trail and in Gateway paid for. That all goes to Lee County now, Lee County Fire District. Yet they're gonna leave you with all the liabilities, so you'll be paying double millage rates, is how we're interpreting the bill. Currently, your millage rate for South Trail, I think, is 2.5. They're looking at a maximum millage rate of 3.75. It also doesn't specify anywhere in the bill that if Lee County Fire District decides that we don't need this fire station in Gateway, they can close it, take our assets, which they would do, and say, okay, we're gonna send that truck, we're gonna rename it and send it to Bayshore because they need an additional fire truck there. So essentially, you lose your fire district and right now, I think South Trail's provided a great service to us. They just bought the property on Gateway Boulevard in Griffith to have a little more exposure. So personally, I'm against it. The Fire Commission Board has sent a letter to the senators and to Caldwell stating our opposition. So I did send everybody the bill. I'm not sure if you read it or not. So it is pretty vague, and it did get tabled until 2018, which is when the question will probably come out. My job, and hopefully if everybody is here takes it, decides whether they're for the bill or against the bill. I'm not here to convince anybody either direction. I just want people to be educated what they're voting for. If they choose that it's a great thing, let's move forward and, support the bill. Wonderful. If you don't, that's fine too. I do have a fire consolidation realities report that's just a mere 77 pages. So I did read it. Some of it is dry, but there's a lot of great information here. Going back all the way to the 70s when this was presented back to the people back then, and they voted it down. So
Can we ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
You had a question, I think, or a comment?
Thank you. Mr. Tarantini, you said you were a fire district commissioner.
yes,
You get paid for that job?
yes,
Does that have anything to do with your view on this?
no, $150 a meeting doesn't. I'm not getting rich. So no. I just became a commissioner. I was elected November 8th. I've not been a commissioner for long. I've been a commissioner since November 8th. So
Thank you.
You're gonna start this grade.
and as a matter of fact, just to add, just so you know, that my first check I donated back to the fire department. So
I talked to Ron, and we had a good discussion about it. And my experience has been on this type of thing, when this type of consolidation occurs, somebody's ox gets gored.
yes.
And usually what it boils down to is somebody is subsidizing somebody else.
Yes, we would
And that's
become a
exactly
donor
what I see
district.
going on here, that it's an attempt to get, let's say, the better off communities to pick up the tab for some of the not so better off communities. And we just ended 8 years of that. I don't want any more of it.
I agree. And right now, if the board has a problem with South Trail, you can pick up the phone and call the fire chief. You can come knock on my door, and you have an outlet to express your opinions and possible changes. Once that becomes Lee County Fire District, that's like going down to the county and telling them, hey, we don't like your ambulance transport. They're gonna look at you and shake their head and go, yeah, that's great. So I just wanted you guys in the loop. I will, if you want future information, I'll be more than happy to continue our relationship and send that to you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to stop by my house, call me, email me. You all have my email.
Yeah, I think if you could continue to stay in communication, and if there's action that we as a district should be taking, even in lieu of the 2018 table, as far as sending information to whoever, just let us know if there's a certain course of action that either way we choose, that we should be voicing our position.
All right. What I would like to see is I mean, you guys interact with people all the time, is talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, find out what they feel about it, and if Gateway, I'm opposed to it because I don't want to see our fire station disappear eventually, because it certainly can. And plus all the equipment that the residents here have paid for. And yet they leave you with the liability. So your millage rate can go from 2.5 to 3.75, plus they take all your stuff. And if South Trail has a couple million in liabilities, you get to pay the new millage rate plus the old one until those liabilities go away. Essentially, there's about 9 districts that become donor districts for the other 6. So, and we've done the calculation. South Trail would lose the first year about $500,000. About $500,000 from South Trail residents, which includes Gateway, would go somewhere else. So, and there's Sanibel's worse than us. Sanibel's like $2 million, so they're not very supportive of it either. So
I know Cape Coral's fighting it, and I
Yes.
suspect the city of Fort Myers will too.
Yeah, they're fighting it on home rule, saying that they can't be told what to do, and I if they win that and if they lose Cape Coral and City of Fort Myers, that millage rate has now exponentially gone up because now they got to make up that funding, because Cape Coral is the largest city in Lee County. So if you lose that funding, now somebody's got to make it up. So
We still haven't found out who's really backing this bill, have we?
no, we have asked we have asked several times, and Representative Caldwell won't give us a straight answer. So we were very happy this morning when they decided to table it until next year. I just think that the questions that they're going to ask, and I'm going to be at those subsequent meetings to find out, because I want to know what questions they're going to put on the ballot. Because if you ask a resident, hey, if we can lower your taxes and improve your service, are you for consolidation? Of course, I'm for consolidation if that's what's going to happen. But that's not what's going to happen. Now, if they were going to lower taxes, then why would they go to a 3.75 millage rate when right now the average across the county is 2.5 to 3?
And I agree with you, the bill is very vague. There's no.
It is.
Money.
Very vague.
Yeah, right. Follow the money.
It is.
Yes,
It's very big. So
Keep us informed.
what I'll do is
We
I'll send you
appreciate that.
this fire consolidation realities report that on your free time, I know you guys would love to read it. But there is some good information going back for years, and who would become donor districts and who would lose what dollars based on today's money. So, and that would be if Cape Coral and City of Fort Myers were included in this. So, and everybody would have, there's a few places that would gain, but most of us down the south end would lose, you know, so that's where I'm at. I wanted to keep you guys informed, so I will send you as much information as I can. If you have any questions, please email me, call me. Feel free to come to a commission meeting in South Trail Fire.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you.
Is there anything else I can answer? No. Thank you.
Okay. Now, we had a walk-on item, I believe, is next.
Thank you.
Walk on or walk in?
I'm like, we do?
What are we talking about?
April White, your business manager. Did you want to present this, or shall I?
Go right ahead.
Okay. At our 12:15 board meeting, we discussed removing me out of the ST contract. And I believe we had some general conversation, whether it be internal or at that particular meeting, we're not sure. We're bringing this back to clarify. Regarding moving Molly's services that she provides outside of the take that out of the ST contract as well. And so we thought that was the general consensus, but when we actually got down to that amendment, Tony had revised it accordingly. We pulled the two specific amounts out of the ST contract, and that was my amount, and then Molly Services also was a totally separate amount that we had done an amendment for in the past. So when we took that out, and we presented it to Mr. Conkar, he pointed out that the motion that we made on 12:15, I do not believe included removing Molly's Services. So we wanted to bring back this, it's the third amendment, but it's the first phase, because there's gonna be another amendment once we eliminate the several of the internal services as far as the management services. So we'll be bringing back another amendment. So this is just that first part to remove me out of the contract and also Molly's services as well. We feel confident as management that what Molly is currently providing us is, in her monthly report, is she's walking the banks of the ponds and the conservation areas with Elle and identifying issues and summarizing those issues in a report to assist us with prioritizing what needs to be done regarding the ponds and the conservation areas.
What you've provided us here looks like it's just removing you. There's nothing in here about Molly.
No, the change that she passed out ahead of time did.
It does.
It's gone.
The paragraph 3 of the third amendment, when it says the First Amendment is terminated, repealed, and canceled in its entirety, that takes the Molly portion out of it. Now,
Right.
Mr. Tinkle caught a math error on my part, and then April brought it to my attention. In paragraph 4 of the Third Amendment, the revision to paragraph 4, the agreement, that number should be $10,000 monthly, because it's $120,000 annually divided by the 12, and not the 12,425. So if you could strike through the 12,425 and insert
She passed that.
10,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
She passed one out.
So we just need to approve this. Is that what you're-
Yeah, and just to finish the comment, is we feel with hiring the Public Works Manager and bringing the District Manager on, between those management positions that we're hiring on, that we are more than capable of reestablishing the process. We're not looking to eliminate what is being provided, just bringing that in-house. So we do intend on continuing to provide inspection and a summarized report that would be made available once the managers come on and we kind of regroup. But we are definitely doing it, in the meantime, interimly, we're definitely doing it informally. Elle's out there every day.
Any questions?
I have several.
Okay.
May I?
Sure.
Can you illuminate for me exactly, or close to exactly, what the $10,000 per month is for? What services is that going to include?
Okay, well, right now, it still includes management services. Okay?
We're talking about accounting, payroll?
Right, everything that they're doing right now, with the exception of my position and what Molly's doing.
And we're talking about preparing the agenda and the board book and all of that business?
Yes, sir.
And okay. Have I
Yes.
left out anything important?
No, really, everything that you're doing, except,
April, I think the
Just
easy
filling
thing to
me
do
out.
is just
Excuse
go
me
to the.
just a second.
Right, I'm gonna help you, Bill.
I don't need it for a moment, thank you. On the second page, on paragraph 6, it's talked about the manager shall devote such time as is necessary. The manager in capital letters. Now, my recollection is that Chris is the district manager in waiting.
this would be Bob Conkar.
Why are you continuing to use the term manager?
Okay, so just to clarify, this is phase 1 of this revision. This is the low-hanging fruit in the contract, what was delineated in the cost structure that we could quickly pull out. And that was my position and the services that Molly's offering. Everything else right now is still in the contract. And this is kind of the argument that Tony made on the 15th as far as how we were going to do this, and that's Chris would be in waiting, because technically we're not peeling out that management portion of the contract today. Internally, we are working together with ST, Margaret, myself, we are working together at making those final revisions to the ST contract.
Does that mean that after we approve this amendment to this contract, that ST is still the district manager?
Yes, sir. For just a short amount of time, until, we're hoping February 2nd.
Thank you.
This formalizes
What we did on 12/15.
April being a district employee. That's what this formalizes.
Thank you.
And it stops that payment. It reduces that payment, which we haven't
Which we need
formally
to
done yet.
What I was gonna say is that pages 1, 2, and 3, and 4 of Exhibit B remain intact at this point in time, and that's what we're negotiating with ST.
Yeah.
Correct. That's correct.
And that'll be the next amendment that comes through, hopefully the next board meeting.
Very, very shortly, yes, hopefully at the next meeting. We thought we had done this portion on 12/15, but we had a little hole in the motion, and so we needed to bring it back to you today.
Ms. Flaherty?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. This is not on the agenda, correct? Now we're going
Well,
to-
it's on the
Should be on the revised agenda.
as a walk-on item.
Okay, I didn't get the revised. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, thank you.
Can I get some clarity? 2 points.
Sure.
One is this is gonna be effective, maybe this is a question for Tony. This is effective back to December 15th, correct?
Correct.
I mean, has Molly been working through today to do stuff? So, I mean, that would be an issue. And then the second piece I just wanna clarify is, I know the stormwater inspection report would be coming out, but isn't there also a field report that I guess was just turned in today? Would that also stop with this piece? Cause you have in here section 5 here about a monthly tour. Is that coming out as well immediately? I just want to clarify.
If that's
for-
Molly's services.
No, Molly is, that's different, right?
That's just,
That's in front.
Was split,
Mhm.
and I was asked to assist Molly in doing business.
Okay.
So I believe in what they formed today, they would be eliminating our services totally.
For basically, under the
Field
consent
service.
agenda, there's a item B, field maintenance report, and then there's a item D. I just don't want us to stop something and it's expected to be continued.
Oh, okay, so I wasn't aware, good
Right.
clarification, thank you. I was not aware that Justin's component for the facilities report was part of the 29,100, that amendment.
No, it wasn't. That's why I'm
Not.
clarifying that point. It's not.
It's not.
That's why this
Right.
piece here is pulling, it was almost like the field maintenance piece was attached to the operational onsite. That's why-
No, I was understanding that Justin's facility report is within the $120,000 that we haven't done
Okay.
yet.
Correct.
Yes, it
That
is.
is correct.
I agree.
So you're just looking for a motion on this, is that right? Tony?
Like,
Did-
Can I get an answer on the December 15th date then? If,
I think that was the understanding that at the 12:15 meeting, when we had the conversation, that with ST agreed that it would be effective as of 12:15. That was my understanding.
But was that inclusive of Molly? I
yeah,
think
not
that's
the
the
Molly, it
question.
wasn't.
Oh, the Molly
The Molly
question.
was not, to me, I think to be fair, it wasn't, I don't recall voting on that. I think it should be prorated.
Okay, so can we possibly make a motion then to make removing my position effective 12/15, because I think we're all comfortable with that, and removing Molly's amendment, that 29,100 effective today, and allow us to administratively prorate the fee? Is that agreeable?
I think that's fair. I'd make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, any other discussion? Call the vote.
Aye.
Aye. Here we go.
What I will do, April, I will revise it to reflect that the termination of the First Amendment is effective today and the cost of that will be prorated. You know, all the terms are effective December 15th. Okay, Stephen, is that good?
That's good.
Thank you.
Consent agenda. I wanted to pull the minutes for a Scrivener's error, that's 4A. Does anybody else have anything that they want to discuss on the consent agenda? C and D? Okay, I'll start then. Anybody else, Bill?
No.
Has anything? Bill? Okay, and this is actually just Terry's name. Terry Handlin's name is in here on line 157 and 212. It's spelled with an I, and I believe that Mr. Hanlon spells his name Terry. So if we correct that, those were my corrections on the minutes. Kathy, C?
Okay, thank you. I'm looking at the expiration dates of these contracts. Okay, the pest control, that one, I page, that's 12. Okay, and that's 2/14/2017. There's a couple there cleaning. Are these going out to bid, or are these just automatic renewals? And then I also have the other one, the management company, that's supposed to expire on March 31st. And I was wondering if that's going out to bid, or is that gonna be just an automatic too?
We're working on the process with the management company. That'll be part of what we bring back to you when we do the adjustment to the contract, the next amendment.
I understand the contract amendment to correct this, but it's only an interim deal because we will be doing, I'm assuming, some type of reevaluation of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And to clarify, I believe, yes, we're gonna just auto-renew with the pest control. We don't have any issues. They're very regular. Everything is going very well with them. And we've got so many other priorities right now that I'd suggest just letting that go for now. And then regarding the RFP, we had a conference call where we spoke with Stephen and Bob, and it was agreed that we would still continue to work on the RFP, because I understand that the timing of all of this is very sensitive. We have not got a proposed amount yet, but we agreed that depending on how we can make this work, that there could be some benefit administratively to remain consistent with our current, with Severn Trent, if we can get the negotiations to work in our favor.
Is it our assumption that the revisions, when we're done with the revisions in the amendment to Severn Trent contract, that would be fairly close to the services that we would most likely have in an RFP moving forward? Does that make sense? Are you following me?
Yes, and I've been spending quite a bit of time on an RFP, and I'm continuing to do that just in case we have to launch at the last minute. Sooner or later, we're going to need it, and it does take quite a bit of work because we didn't have that design originally. It is changing the scope of services completely, and so we're trying to do a very thorough job to make sure that we have everything covered and don't underestimate our expectations in an RFP.
And I guess my question might be to Stephen, when we go through this revision, at this point, it's just a matter of modifying the existing contract, pulling things out, and then we're left with whatever the amount is, which would probably get us close to our RFP, what we're looking for. Maybe not. So my point is, after this next round of amendments, there may be additional changes of scope in what our services might be in the RFP. Is that?
Yes, I think as far as the details,
Okay.
I think when you're looking for a management company, on your accounting side, I think the actual documentation, there's a lot of assumed responsibilities that aren't well documented
Right.
in our
Yeah,
contract.
there's a lot of accounting standards.
Right.
That have to be assumed.
Okay.
In order to do certain things, so.
And I'll just hold any other comments until that comes back, because I'm sure there'll be some clarity on, and we'll maybe make some decisions.
I agree.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay.
No, those were just the expiration dates that I was concerned about.
You wanted to pull D?
I do. Okay, agenda on page 27. It says here, staff is working to have this in the budget for minor repairs, and that is from November of 2016. And I'm looking at, that's still there as the staff is working. And I have one on page 28, the one below it too is, and, no, 81. That staff is working with contractor to address, and that's, we don't have a solution to that, and that's from September. So that's 4 months, and on page 28, we have some that are from September without any resolutions, so I was just concerned what's going on.
That raises a good point. That gets back to the very issue we were talking earlier about non-SRF funding on some of this stuff. Do we have a kitty or a pool or a fund allocation that I'm not aware of that's in the budget to basically do this kind of stuff? And if we do, how are we determining who's preparing the specs for these contractors that are gonna be doing this, since we're now 5 months into it?
So one of the issues that a couple of things that I'd like to point out is we have had discussion before about this particular report. We've sat down with staff, and this is part of the dilemma, is we're really great at identifying issues. But the supervisors have already got some momentum. They've already realized that we need more staffing, and we're working on that process. Also, I want you to recognize that when the 2017 budget was prepared, I was the knowledge when it comes to these, working behind the operational needs of this district. And I had just got here in February and had no structured budget, line item budget to go by as far as being able to track, hey, what did we do? What are our needs? Where do we need to set that 2017 budget? So we did a lot of identifying and resetting, reestablishing whatever the prior year budget was. So as we increased staffing and management and we were able to fine tune those processes, specifically budgeting and planning, we're going to be able to budget accordingly and identify those issues more timely so we can actually be more prepared to deal with those issues and actually provide some effectiveness on resolving the problems that we're identifying. But that's something that we're working on right now is we need to identify the issues and keep going and figure out how are we going to resolve them. And right now, we are not doing that well. But that's one of the areas that the Public Works Manager would be responsible for to help bring those things to fruition.
Margaret, question on that. I'd like to see another column, April, on this, especially if it has to do with money. When we're sitting here talking about staff working with contractors, I come to pretty much all the meetings. I don't ever remember a contract or a fee for services needing to be done, for example, on 81 at all. Is this a deal that just hasn't risen to that level yet? And that staff working with the contractor has been working with them for 5 months, and we still don't have a number? What are we talking about? Are we talking about $10,000, or are we talking about $100,000? I think we need a
when it
column.
comes to calling out these numbers and these ponds, I am not going to be good at reciting anything specific as far as the conversations. I did not have an opportunity to sit down with staff and discuss this particular report like we have been doing. At one point in time, we had modified it to include what our action plan is, and clearly, I still don't think that there's a well-devised action plan. So I really I can't answer that particular question on that one pond.
I think what needs to happen is it needs to be updated.
Yeah, I think when the Public Works guy gets in, Margaret, and he can get in this, he would be able to not only have a column of what the estimate of the cost is, but we start having another column that identifies where it's coming from, and we start keeping tabs. Because I don't know how much money we have in this so-called budget item or line item, but it's gonna dissipate real quick.
Well, and Mr. Guy had his budget. I'm gonna start bringing it. That's an excellent idea. And there's actually a line item that has $135,000 set aside for minor repairs, that kind of.
So that would be where this is coming from.
Right,
Yeah,
exactly.
I mean, I fundamentally have some issues with this report and have for a while.
Kathy, did you want to?
I think we need to do a little bit better job of not only identifying, what actions are and when that, when it was reviewed, also what staff is assigned to it. And I even think there should be some type of prioritization. What's the priority?
Have to be.
And because we need to bring these items back if there's funding and be able to either vote on an approval or just something. It's just, the report just seems really hollow to me, and I think we've all, this is the first time we've talked about it, but just the tracking overall, I think we need to do a better job, because this could be a really nice actual report that we can just visualize, red, yellow, green. There's things that are, and I would even like for, maybe it's the Public Works Manager, whoever, but there has to be a time, there has to be SLAs around these issues, whether it's 30, 60, 90 days, or at some point, an item has to go red. Like, we haven't made action on it, we need to do something. So I know you're aware, and there's issues, so that's just my input.
Madam Chairperson, I have one other thing I'd like to mention.
Yes, sir.
Several times this afternoon, we've talked about this SRF money as though it is not our money, as though it's the state's money. In actuality, this is our money, because we're going to have to pay this all back sooner or later. And I don't want anybody to forget that although the work that Danny does in telling the state what the plan is, and sending the invoices in for reimbursement and all of that business, that is going to be a huge amount of work. Sooner or later, this district is gonna have to repay to the state plus interest all of that money. Please don't ever forget that.
Yep.
I don't. Thank you. Thank you. The reminder is a good reminder. Anybody have anything else on the
No, and I think that's
consent
just,
agenda?
and that's a good point, because if we can set up SRF scope and then maintenance, it's cheaper for us to, if we can pay for it, it's cheaper for us to do it today than to pay interest on it. And I don't know if that's where you were going, but.
Well, there's some truth to that. But the other part is, we've got leeway in this fiscal 17 general fund budget, that we can move things around, and make adjustments in this budget and the expenditure plan and priorities as we go along during the year. I don't want us to be willy-nilly, don't get me wrong, but we've got some flexibility here on things in addition to what Danny and the SRF is gonna provide.
Bill, somebody, and I'm new obviously, but been to most of the meetings, somebody needs to be able to take for all 64 of our ponds and flowways, and I'm assuming this is also including the conservation easements, or is that separate? They fall in this same pool of money? Bill, do you know?
I'm sorry, I was
Do
getting.
the conservation easements fall in this same pool of money?
I think there's a separate line item for the.
A separate line item for that? Well, my point is it would be nice, again, if staff, and I know it's gonna take work to do it, but if we could take our 64 ponds, and we've got them identified, God only knows how many places, start going through them and identifying which ponds would have maintenance-type items that would qualify for what we're talking about, this number, just to get us an idea of to what level of dollars we're talking about, that if it would come out less than, what'd you say, $138,000, then our need to prioritize isn't that significant. But I'm gonna guess it's gonna be significantly higher than that, which means we need to prioritize.
Well, prioritizing is a very important part, but we need to remember that every year that I've been on this board, we have not spent all of the money that we've budgeted.
Well, and it's,
And
well,
let me, before we get off talking about the 135, and this is what I thought we've got money in here that we had budgeted ponds, major repairs, outflow structures, stormwater system renovation and maintenance, $600,000.
well, that's part of the stuff that we're doing at Stony Brook
For
and
this year,
at,
for last year,
Yes.
2016.
Silver Lakes. That's a separate issue.
And lake bank restoration, $700,000.
Yeah. Well, my point is identifying these so that we have an idea as to what
So
the
we've-
dollar value is that we have.
Budgeted money.
Okay.
We need a
That's what I-
process.
That's what I wanted.
What would be nice is to know, how did we do it? Did somebody do a listing and come up with that number, or did we have a Ouija board, or how did we come up with that number? I don't know.
That was actually budgeted a couple of years ago.
That was
That-
I'm just asking, what was the
600,000
basis of it?
Well, let's just
last year,
operate on the
and that
assumption
came
that
from-
the money is budgeted. How we choose
How do
to
we
spend
spend
it
it? That's
is
the
up
key.
to us. And I think we need to
Exactly.
do the assessment of the
Ponds and figure it out.
ponds.
Yep.
And I think we need to set up a process around maintenance, repair, and put some walls around it.
But also getting back to Bill's comment, and not saying against what was done in the past, but that's why we didn't spend it, just this very deal here. We authorized it in September, we haven't done nothing.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
why we don't spend it. And
And
I think the
that's
issue.
why we need some help.
Yeah, we need help in that.
Needs help.
Yep, I agree.
Okay. On that, I will ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
So move.
Second.
Call the question.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, staff reports, district council.
Just a couple items on Pelican Preserve. We anticipate on the 16th meeting, 2 items coming forward, the traffic control agreement with the city of Fort Myers. The city attorney's office has approved the form of it, and PPAC, or my understanding, is recommending approval, but I understand on February 2nd, there's a large gathering meeting in Pelican Preserve.
The Alliance.
The Alliance meeting. And so I think there's a suggestion from Mr. Measy that the items involving Pelican Preserve be held on the 16th meeting.
Makes sense to me.
That's one of them. And the other one is the operation and maintenance agreement also. We, about 99.9% there. We had a couple additional comments, I think, from April, and we'll get with Mr. Measy or Mr. Grega, probably Mr. Grega, and work with Castle Group and have that on the agenda also. On the Tiberio, as drains, as Mr. Gephardt mentioned, I've reviewed the covenants for Tiberio. They don't provide me the comfort level, but the master covenants for Pelican Preserve provide the ability for the district to have these easements over the properties not covered by houses or lots or structures, as long as we don't create any damage to the houses or lots, and this is just in the grassed areas. So I would be preparing a memo to the board, copy to Mr. Gephardt in April with my opinion that the district would have the requisite easements to install those, I'll call it catch facilities for to take the rainwater off the gutters into the lakes and ponds. And on SRF,
Tony, if I just may.
yeah, I'm sorry about
Once we get that approval, we are not, Ponds is not expecting or PPAC to come back to you since you've already approved the money. And we want to get this done before it gets rainy. So based on that, we're going to go with it once we get that approval from him. And I want to make sure the board is comfortable with that.
It was approved contingent
Yep.
on.
Okay,
legal
just
clarification.
can't make it clear enough. Thank you.
Get her done.
On the SRF, we had a good conversation, conference, the folks in the state are great, FDP, Betsy Hewitt and Tim Banks, but confirming what you've said all along.
You didn't make them mad.
Oh, no, they're wonderful
Good,
people.
good.
No, Tim Banks was just real, just wonderful. Because what we talked about was the first part, I'll call it design, engineering professional fees, the Tetra Tech's fees, whether that could be a 5-year term note loan. And they said, sure, we're very flexible on those matters. And so they can make that a 5-year, not have to worry about 20 years for that one. As for the second piece, we also talked to them, explained to them about the need to do the bond validation and whether or not we could get any extensions on that loan arrangement if we run into little time constraints on the bond validation or validation proceeding. And they said they're pretty flexible on that too if you have a good reason. And again, just very, very nice, extremely nice people. I can't say enough good about them, quite frankly.
Beware.
No, I'm serious.
With a name like Banks, how could you?
Oh, yeah, that's true. I never thought of it. But he had more of a southern accent than you did.
Yeah. Wow.
Lot
Yeah,
more.
he says y'all a lot more than you do. Too.
I have restraint.
Madam Chairperson,
Yes, Mr.
can you update us on when Lee County's going to take over the roads?
They have to, hopefully, we're shooting for February, I guess, but I'm not sure, but it might be more March, but February. Mr. Cecil has been very active in maintaining contact with the folks at the county, and they're reviewing the documentation we provided as well as what WCI provided. And he's still shooting for February. Do you know something different than that?
No.
Anything else, Tom?
Yes, ma'am.
Whoever.
Oh, one other update, it's not on the agenda, is the roads from WCI to the district. We had talked about having them on an earlier agenda, but my review of the title work indicated a number of issues need to be addressed. And I think, I've not heard back from WCI, but I assume they're addressing those and working on those title issues.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything.
How about what was the lighting, what was the?
Fairway.
Fairway, yeah. Are you
Office
covering
Park.
that? No?
Fairway Office Park.
Yeah,
April, you sent the letter and you had,
They're off and we haven't heard,
So
haven't
the
heard
power's
anything.
just off. Okay.
I figured you'd hear from them after that happened.
It's been surprisingly quiet.
I don't know how. I feel about that.
Surprisingly dark.
Anything else, Tony?
No.
District engineer.
For the record, Danny Nelson with Tetra Tech District Engineer. I have one item, it's kind of a piggyback on Tony's from the SRF. A lot of activity since our last meeting. I actually have a letter, this one's yours, but if you can pass those down. We actually received this week. So since the last meeting, we have contacted DEP. We had made sure they had all of the documents that are required that will ultimately allow us to bid. We received a call that said that, great, however, it doesn't look like there's going to be any money, and the board probably saw that email I'd sent out.
Did we ever?
Followed subsequently by a couple of phone calls to Tim Banks and an immediate call back from Payne Cash Shaw, who is the one that drafted the letter in front of you, saying, we misspoke, there is money, make sure we have all your documents. They did. They subsequently sent this letter, which said, everything looks great, you're okay to go ahead and advertise. So tomorrow, there is an advertisement that will be in the paper and the news press, going out to public. Now, the reason why it's going out to public and not to the pre-qualified is that in discussing it internally, the pre-qualification that was done was more, although it wasn't intended necessarily for that, it was intended for the bidding of this. The way it was worded, it could leave interpretation that it was for maintenance purposes. So we all agreed, in this case, let's open it up to the bidding. We put some of those stipulations that we had in that pre-qualification of performing similar type work as a requirement, so that when award is made, we can hopefully eliminate some of those non-qualified vendors. And we will certainly make sure that the vendors that are pre-qualified will have this, and we've already reached out to them to let them know. So a lot of work that's gone on over the last couple of weeks, including the work that Tony's done and what we'll continue with the bond validate or the validation process, and also short-term financing is being lined up as well. So we should be in pretty good shape. The public hearing for DEP is February 10th, and provided that they approve the project, what that means is they'll then send us a letter similar to the one you see in front of you that'll basically say, your project has been approved for funding, that anything from that point forward associated with the project is reimbursable. So while we're finalizing the loan application and going through the validation process, regardless of when that's settled, we can still go back to that February 10th or whatever the date is and be reimbursed through the disbursement process for that. So that's good news. And I think the timing will line us up that our plan is to get back a recommendation at the second meeting in February to the board to hopefully allow for a March 1 start date. So that's what we're looking for. We are advertising to allow each lake as its own individual project. So, I miss anything?
Yeah, Danny, I had sent to you and to April, and I think April passed it out, I hope, to all the board members. That's a pain not being able to do it, but the cost breakdown, total projects cost breakdown with the cash flow.
For the short
Did you
term.
copy all the board members? I hope so. Anyway, long story short.
I haven't seen anything.
I don't know if I saw that.
It would have been probably a week and a half ago.
Yeah, about a week and a half
while ago.
Anyway, there were,
Did you get that?
it was about $2,856,000 was the, I said at the last meeting I had a form to do that, so I went and filled it out. And since I can't deal with you individually, send it to April. But anyway, the issue is that I thought I had a pretty good handle on the estimate of the construction cost, the engineering, because we've been working together. There were three costs that were hanging. One was Tony's fees, but he'll defer those. Bond counsel fees, and then there was one that Stephen from your office had put in that is kind of up in the air, that was hoping that when you guys had the conversation with Tim and Betsy, this itemization of origination fee, which was $120,000. I put it in my budget, but if we don't need it, we certainly don't want it in there. The question is, we need to be getting that, because then that impacts Stephen on the cash flow, and I had a cash flow analysis, but right now, all this might be moot. Whatever the total project cost is, if we're looking at a June or July closing, we might have to have the line of credit go to the full amount, because we'll get the work done quick enough before we have closed with the SRF.
And on that loan origination fee, I think out of the exuberance of that conversation, I forgot to answer the question.
And we could certainly
Well,
follow up
Bond
and.
counsel said they were gonna get back to you to get
Yeah.
that fee was a little shaky on it,
Yeah,
but
I need
other than that, I think we had delineated out, and I was, sorry, I thought you guys had it, but,
I don't know
Gotta
why there'd be an origination fee on an SRF loan personally, but
I don't know either, but I wasn't familiar with it, of how they work it down here, but it was $120,000, so it was a big ticket item. But bottom line, we're in the neighborhood of about a 2.7 million if we don't have the 120,000, 2.8 plus if we do have the 120,000. Total cost to get us through these first 5 ponds. That's both the engineering and the soft cost. And that leads to a cash flow that I presented also. I know I sent it to Stephen, so that gives you an idea of what we're looking at going to the bank.
It was sent out to all.
It was sent out to all the
April
board members, so all you do have it then.
But I know what you're talking about now.
Okay.
Num-
2%.
Number one, the cash flows that I used to use had revenue and expenditures by week at least. What I saw was just had some numbers in a month.
Under the SRF program and under what we've set up in the deal here, it's monthly payment requests. So vendors are only going to be submitting payment requests to you monthly. So the soft cost of your engineer and/or your attorney and your bond counsel, they'll come in right at the very beginning, in the very first month that they're done with their services. And then throughout construction, Danny's firm and Chris and the company that does the inspection will be turning in monthly invoices. Everything's monthly.
Understand all that.
Okay.
What I think is being overlooked is how long it's gonna take, once those fees are incurred, to get the reimbursement money from the state, and that can take to 6 or 8 weeks.
That's what I'm trying to say, Bill. From the last meeting that we talked,
This meeting of this board,
the meeting of this board, what had came up in that meeting was that the projection we're looking at is a closing in June. Tony mentioned earlier that it might vary a couple of weeks or a month, so it could be July. If our work starts March, theoretically, all the work could be done and all the bills submitted to us and then sent to the bank before we can even make the reimbursement request. So what I did when I was calculating interest, I took the worst case scenario and said, we're gonna front end this whole 2.8 million bucks. And then we'll get reimbursement from the state on or about, make the request on or about June 1st, probably get paid, hopefully, 30 to 45 days
August.
later.
Will one of you gentlemen tell me about this $120,000 origination fee? That sounds outrageous to me.
Yeah, and again,
And I've got some history in this business, okay, so help me
Yeah,
out.
I forgot to ask that question in that phone call. We ended up talking about some other matters, explaining various issues to them, so I apologize.
Well, the way it started is when you all had the facility plan prepared, what was it, a year and a half ago? About a year ago. Stephen at Tetra Tech had done an itemization of the cost, construction, and lumped it into soft cost. Well, then you ask him to come back and break out the soft cost, because if you recall, we'd only asked for $5 million. We didn't have enough to cover soft, so we raised it. He had an itemization of all the various soft costs. Well, he had a line item that said SRF origination fee. I don't know that it exists. I don't know. I'm just asking the question. I would be more than happy if we find out that it isn't necessary at all, and we just strike it from the deal. But it's $120,000 that was budgeted at the very beginning, and so I just carried it on.
Okay, well,
That's what it's about.
it seems to me that it would be very unusual to have to pay an origination fee of that, but.
I'd never heard of it while I was doing this.
I don't know how they do things in this state of Florida, so it's not impossible, I guess.
I don't think it exists.
I haven't seen it in any of the deals I've done with them, but
Well, that'd make it easy. If we strike it, then we just got 120,000 more.
Thank you.
And where did, have we landed on whether or not we want to proceed with a grant manager?
I'm of the opinion that the risk of doing it in-house with all the technicalities of the initial program, and we're gonna be borrowing this money and basically paying for it all the way. The last thing we wanna do is on June 1st, wanna make a request for a reimbursement and then screw it up, because we don't know all the nuances of what we call grants management. I'd much rather take and have that firm, I budgeted into the cost, I think 5 months at $3,000 a month for a grants administrator.
Oh,
I
yeah,
think it's.
have the pros do it.
I
It's-
think the
it's
pros
too
doing
easy-
it's the
too
way to
easily
do it.
get fouled up.
I mean, I'm
totally
in
agree.
agreement with that, and what do we need to do? I mean, is that
We need
something
to, I think Chris needs to take and contact one or two of these firms that do this. We already have a name of one that's very good in it. And I use 3,000. I think that number is high. I think it's high. But the one thing, keep in mind that we're working on this is that if we do find that the loan is not going to be a reimbursement on a monthly basis, their level of services are going to be restricted to just verifying that the contractor's complying with Davis-Bacon and that type of stuff. And it may be that they only make one payment request.
Well, that's
The one at the
likely where
very
we'll
end.
end up at. Well, keep in mind, you know,
So we
the
gotta
big
check.
things are going to be Davis-Bacon, which you're going to be addressing that up front, and you're going to have wage rates that are going to be addressed up front. You're also going to have a requirement now. This was not when you were doing these, Bill, and when you're doing these, Ed. Buy American was an option. Now it's a requirement. However, we don't have any. It's Buy American steel and iron. We don't have any steel or iron on this project, so it's not going to be applicable. So that's out the window. So there's nothing to monitor there. So it's really going to be down to Davis-Bacon. And I would fully believe that you're going to have one disbursement request that you're going to make. So their time. So all I want to say with that is the board had met Corbett all day previously, and Chris has been in contact with Corbett. Corbett gave a proposal previously, and the only thing I want to caution the board on is, as I read it, it was a flat cost per month.
Yeah.
I would recommend that it's hourly based on what his services actually are and not a flat cost per month. So that's
I would
just
agree with that
my
based on our
recommendation.
limited scope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is that something that, is Chris taking that?
Yes,
Item
Chris has
two?
already.
Yeah. And I would also say, Chris, I mean, there's, not only is it management for this project, but I think it's just a good move for us to make in the future. We've got, you know, a grants manager, someone that is maybe out bird dogging other grants, helping, you know, facilitate the paperwork for that. Because I think we're really missing opportunities
Yep.
around that. And that, when you have that conversation, I mean, we definitely, the primary requirement is for this project, but the philosophy is that we would, you know, leverage this person down the road to help identify and facilitate other grant opportunities.
Well, so, you know, too, on that topic, we did submit on the most common grant, which is it's a water quality grant. So there's two. There's a water quality and a 319 grant is what they're referred to through DEP, through the state. And we did submit for that water quality grant, and we did not make the cut. So it all depends on, and we can certainly submit again. That pops up usually a couple of times a year, and it really depends on how many other submitters there are, how much money they have, and where you rank.
Yeah.
So we missed the cut.
And, yeah.
Madam Chairman, just to clarify, we may have the answer, at the DEP website under FAQs, under the Clean Water SRF program. The question is, are there fees associated with the loan? All loans are charged a loan service fee of 2%. And it's based on actual project costs, so it only applies to funds used.
So only applies to what?
Funds that are used.
So it could be $56,000 if we spent the whole 2.8.
We just might want to clarify that with Tim, but that's what it says on the website.
No, that's what I'm used to.
Okay.
2%.
Yeah, okay. That's good.
So we say 70.
No, ma'am,
70 grand.
that's
That's
it.
why the 120
Got
up
some
front.
extra money.
We're gonna move on to the business managers.
Oh,
report.
hey, I'm sorry. Where are we at with the RV storage?
I was actually meeting with Tyler today on that. We have a preliminary layout, let's call them 60%. We're actually going to bring that back to the next board with costs as well. I think the layout of the actual individual spaces is something that we still want some input from the board. What we want to get down is the actual driving path, the road through there, and then we can still work on the actual slots later, the sizes, the angles. So we can bring it back with what we've prepared, and we're going to bring back some costs, and I think too looking at what the operation and maintenance costs and what the revenue are as well.
Does anybody have, any of the board members have a problem with maybe me interacting with Danny and Tyler before they meet, before they bring it back? So if there's maybe some recommendations or things that you want to maybe, bounce off me.
That'd be great.
In preparation, it might.
Go right ahead.
Okay, all right.
That'd be great.
Big boat.
And I have a
We'll call you
request
tomorrow.
for a 5-minute break, so
Okay.
I'm gonna
Thank you.
allow a 5-minute.
Tony read your mind.
I'm out of town. I know. I'll be around in the morning.
What we're thinking, what he has laid out, part of it is like, if we're looking at, you know, 50-foot RV, making sure they have enough space to pull through and make the turn. So what he's got is actually a 30-foot line, this driveway, like 24. So he's actually has a 30-foot line driveway with a large radius.
Which creates a little bit of waste. You need it, but it's,
And the other part is, whether that's,
I mean, it would be great if there was a, you know, where you.
that's how he's got, yeah, he's got, so right now when you come in, right now you come in, and the smaller slots are gonna be on the outside.
He will,
And he has them all angled,
he will
so.
be able
Your RVs will pull in the middle and they pull out and go around. So on the outside,
Well, you gotta have room for an 18-foot trailer.
exactly.
18 plus, you're gonna have a, you know, it's not like it's gonna be a Cooper who's carrying it.
Well, and that's what I was telling Tyler, is I said, think about it. Most of the people that have these, they're the weekend warriors. They're not people that drive semis for a living and can back into, so you gotta give them space.
You gotta have some variance there.
So, let's say the inside is basically here, and then the outside. So, he's actually thinking we would go ahead and pave this. Keep all of this as grass. So the outside are on like 45s, and I think these are 12 by whatever, 20, and these are like 50 by 15. So, it's, so I guess in theory what they do is they would, and it's both way. So the guys that are parked over here, what they do is drive in this way. They drive in this way, back in, and then pull out.
Or the other way around,
Or-
when you go in, and then these are slotted.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
One thing here, because what's gonna be important, what we don't have here, which creates tons of problems, is if it's boundaries. If it's grass.
I'm glad
I was, April and I were talking, you know,
The little blocks.
the blocks as your borders.
Tyler had a good idea, is get the paving done. What he actually had is right now he has this, the parking areas as gravel. I said, let's just make them grass.
Yes, sir.
And we pulled up probably one of the biggest ones in our area is actually in North Fort Myers. Exactly what you're talking about. And this is paved, this is grass, and each corner is just one of those little concrete blocks.
Board had authorized us is to do bank restoration. I know we did by way of the
The
budget.
amount of rain you get, and you're
Not to
talking
exceed
about trailers,
$100,000.
and maybe, are we gonna get any type of?
We did.
You could actually stabilize that and then put grass on top of it. So not just use what's there, you could actually stabilize it.
Be cheaper than laying
Well, here's
gravel
the-
on it, maintaining it, and-
The big thing, yes, and the biggest thing though is, I'm worried if we add that impervious, because even though it'd be gravel, it'd be considered impervious, is that now we're gonna have to put a big ass retention system in there.
No, I'm fine with grass, as
So-
long as we have some borders.
I think before,
You know,
you can always,
and even, are you talking about paving in the middle too? or
no,
leaving-
no, leave it grass as well.
So that's why I don't want to wait another month.
Good luck, thanks.
I'm okay because you're not competitive bid, it's under, it's under all thresholds.
And I asked her, Margaret,
Well, the policy with that, on the agenda, to give the public an opportunity to comment.
Thanks,
I
Jim.
know
But
we have to
that's
do it.
exactly what Tyler was saying, is do this in phases.
That's
Do
one way,
this,
you know, just-
and if you want to add gravel later, you can always do that. But what I want to do is before this I'd say is, this is your biggest decision. Before you make a decision on exactly what you want to do there, let's go look at the one in North Fort Myers. I mean, we looked at it on Google Earth, and we haven't been there, but we looked at it on Google Earth, and it's probably, looks like 10 acres. maybe bigger than that. There's semis truck there, there's RVs truck
Yeah.
there,
And the only one
and the
I'll
grass
pull
looks
up-
fine, I mean, on Google Earth. So, you know, but but we can go look at that, but you can always,
Because I think we need to look at.
Very good, but still got some things I gotta
We
cut.
really need to get to network.
yeah.
So,
How bad?
get it done for whatever. and that's-
Okay, but I don't want them to dirty.
And they still have other issues they need to fix on the conveyance and the landscape. You know, I mean, they've got,
I'm only talking about.
I understand, yeah, we have a document signed by.
Looking at $7,500, probably,
Show me that's still good.
probably
You know what I mean?
less. I mean, the gate is
No, I mean, I've
for a
not heard from
good,
them on that.
high-quality commercial, just the operating system.
know.
You're probably looking at
Bugging us
2-3
about
grand
paper.
for that, and then whatever the cost of the gate is. So it's not much in
I
an
could
hour.
give you a much quicker summary of what was done.
I would,
If the
yeah.
report that Morris Riley did had
Yeah, I
followed the
would.
same format as what they did 4 years ago. Unless he introduced a new format requires me to do some interpretation.
The problem is if you get like a, you know, if you don't get a high-quality one, lightning's just gonna pop it
And I wrote him a letter saying,
Station
all
to
the
station,
time.
MES to
Yeah, but a
MES.
good commercial one, I get,
And they changed the format.
it's worth it. I think this actually has of the larger, and I would restrict what
And
you
then
get
open
in
up
there
for
too,
comment,
because
Margaret.
you know the one in
Then
North Fort
just
Myers,
open
there's
up the
semi trucks, and I'm like, you don't need anything like that. This is all like,
And I would almost even look at it as like, you can allocate size.
Let's call the meeting back to order, please.
Let's say you're.
Some people think for some reason to be opposed to it. Talk about the school.
Oh, God, yes.
I would just do perimeter lighting.
That's a school.
That's gonna be
Is it a
low cost. You're probably
godly
gonna be
amount of
looking
money?
at
That's an actual amount?
7,
That's not a
8,
mistake?
10 grand maybe for the small lighting.
I thought-
think
I
you
thought
can
it was a
even
mistake.
use some of the lighting from the poles. In here, there are actually almost 60 slots in here for the larger.
They must be gonna
Yeah,
have
and he
a
has, and right now, these are all
complexes
sized the
rival,
same size. They're all
Florida
just
State
smaller.
Gators.
If you had a bigger, it would be a lot easier to do like, if you had the ability to do a row, and another row, you could actually come in the middle,
And do a whole nother.
put 2 of them back to back.
Mr. Banks, let's
that-
call the
that number's
meeting
way
back
too
to
high.
order, please. Okay. Business managers report. We've lost our business manager. Well, in that case, Tony, I'm gonna go ahead and have Mr. Gephardt come up and take care of that.
Bob Geppert from Pelican Preserve again. In an effort to speed up the process of using the remaining bond fund money within Pelican Preserve, we have a contract, we will have a contract on Monday because we just got the specifications to do a bank replenishment with Armor Max, bank restoration with Armor Max from Extreme Divers on Pond 27. We have budgeted money for $100,000 for this project, and if we can get board approval, through whatever motions that Tony has to make for approval of spending this, not to exceed $100,000, then we'd appreciate it. We can get it rolling on the dry season.
Yeah, Madam Chairman, what I'd suggest is that you ask any members of the public that are remaining if they wish to comment on that, and so they can come up and address this topic.
Any comments? Okay, Tony, how do you want the?
I think authorize the chairman to execute any documents necessary for the contract with
Extreme Divers
Extreme Divers for the Lake Bank Restoration Program not to exceed $100,000.
for Pond 27 in Pelican Reserve.
And this was money the board had previously.
It is in our budget, and I believe it was in a previous meeting, we approved it.
And I believe, as Mr. Gephardt indicated, it's part of the bond proceeds also.
Yes, oh, it is all bond proceeds.
So, somebody make that motion?
So move.
Second for discussion.
Thank you.
Bob, are you doing materials purchased separately, or are you doing it through Extreme?
We are trying to do it in a coordinated fashion. We've been talking to Brad about that, so yeah, we're lunching in on the Gateway program.
Okay, wait.
To save
Coordinated
money.
fashion, I mean, you're gonna purchase the materials and supply them, or,
Gateway is purchasing, I believe,
okay.
and then somehow we got a better deal if you guys bought everything, right? He explained it to me, all I heard was save money.
We're doing that on our 5 phases, but I don't know anything about your projects.
Well, I think he's gonna steal some of yours and then replenish it back. I could be wrong about that, but he told me I was saving money.
He,
Who's he?
Oh, Extreme Divers, Brad.
well, that's news to me.
Well,
We were paying 70-some cents, you guys were only paying 50 or something
Our
like
problem
that.
is that if you are wanting to go, you're gonna be working without any product, because we haven't got the product We haven't even bid it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, see, we're ready to go.
Why wouldn't Brad just get it on his own on that project?
Then maybe he will.
Okay.
That may be what he has to do. That was my only question.
Okay.
Okay, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And one last comment, Track L, we've had many conversations with WCI trying to turn it over to us. With respect to the ponds, we got a report yesterday from Morris Riley, and there are some things that they need to do. So we're gonna go back to Mr. Caldwell and Company and tell them, once they do these A, B, and C, then we're good to go with it. But the latest and greatest is, and we're really not in a hurry, because they're paying. You know, they're paying the $31,000 a month or whatever. So, but that's the update.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Business managers report.
Hello again, April, your business manager. I apologize for not having the report in your packet and on the agenda. I wanted to go over a couple of quick things. Like I said earlier, working on the RFP for accounting services. Website is coming along nicely. We are currently doing our first review. So we have a lot of issues, a lot of things that need to be corrected. We're going through each little click and going into each little page, making sure the menu items are correct and drilling down on everything, making sure that everything's functioning. We've added a lot of content placeholders. So there's a lot of things that you'll see once we get launched that you'll drill down and go into a page and it'll say something like content coming soon. You know, because we've had a lot of ideas for phase 2 as far as what we want to have on our website. So we're kind of capitalizing on this process and having the programmer to go ahead and set our little placeholders out there.
This page intentionally left blank.
Exactly, exactly. Also, we hope to bring, I know there's been some interest in revitalizing the Girl Scout building issue, bringing that back to the board. So as Danny mentioned earlier, I hope to bring back to you a recommendation on the 2nd. And with that, why I say I hope is because we would like to bring back a fairly comprehensive packet to you, considering whether to remodel this building, to purchase the Girl Scout building, to build a new building on the pool property up there on Gateway Boulevard. The costs associated with those ideas, the pros and the cons as have been suggested, and also the storage facility. At the same time, we want to present that revenue model to you because those are general fund dollars that will be available to either fund future maintenance and operation of the facility, the storage facility, also available for any financing that Stephen is working on. And so it's kind of a bundle package as far as making that decision. So that's what we hope to bring back the 2nd, and if not, hopefully that next meeting in February for sure. Also, the new positions have been advertised, and we have received resumes, and Chris is probably going to update you a little bit on that. He's going through the first review. And also, we've got through the ST contract amendment. Stephen and Chris and I had a conference call. We are working on the 2017 budget reprioritization. So part of that is the cost of the reorg that we've approved, the cost of the new positions. Also, these operating issues that we keep bringing up, such as the washouts on 83. So I made a note to throw that log onto the fire. So hopefully we'll bring back that reprioritization with a funding plan on how we're going to make all that happen. Also, working on revising the job descriptions for the 4 manager positions that you approved on the 15th. So that's something that we also hope to bring back to you on the 2nd. It's currently in review right now by our working group, so hopefully that will be ready. Also, trying to get some momentum on the consultant position that you approved on the 15th. Haven't had a lot of opportunity to work on that yet, but that's on my radar. Also, discovered something that was fairly, I thought, surprising about the soccer complex. I've spoke to a couple of you regarding the cost of the lights and our revenue, our fee structure for the soccer complex. It was recently brought to my attention that currently the leagues are not paying for the lights. So what we intend to do, the root cause of that is the fee schedule that we've adopted. My issue and why I felt compelled to bring it to the board as a whole is that you adopted the fee schedule, and I kind of wanted to get some input to have a better understanding of what the revision to the fee schedule needs to be by getting your input on whether you felt that that was a cognizant decision of the board, or whether, because I know we've talked about the expenses over there and the lights being the primary expense, and the primary users are the leagues. So I just wanted to, I know there's only, two of you here, I believe, but it is what is the consensus? I mean, we want the leagues to help support the cost of the lights, correct?
Why don't you prepare for, why don't you let us have the current fee schedule and how much money it's bringing in and how much the soccer complex is costing us for the next meeting, so we can have
Okay.
some solid numbers to
Okay,
work with.
I can do that.
Margaret, along with that, I brought it up the last meeting, that we look at our capital, I think there's still some confusion on that lighting. We have budgeted $70,000 or $80,000 for a 5-year period.
For each year.
Correct. And talking to Bentley Electric, from the monies that have already been approved and the work orders that have already been approved, totaling about $120,000, the way they talk, we don't need that money.
Yeah.
So if we don't need that money, I'm sure we've got places that we could put it.
We don't need,
The $80,000 a year for the next 5 years to do the $400,000 in lights. But Bentley is telling me that the improvements that we have already authorized them to do in the purchase orders will fix it and buy us time.
So basically, at the time of 2018 budgeting, we just need to make note that
What I think we need to do is maybe either Chris or, Chris maybe want to talk to Bentley and make sure we're on the right page, that he's telling me that he's got enough money to really get us to where that 400,000. That old 400,000 was all based upon coming in with a lighting scheme of similar to, if you were doing it at the University of Florida State, putting in those real fancy lights. We don't need to go to that route.
Yeah.
I'd like to see that in writing.
So I'd like to see that, yeah.
Let's get
Well,
clarification.
I'd like to hear it, because that's what he's telling me, that the 120,000, I believe that was the number, it was 2 purchase orders, that's more than enough going to get us satisfied, and if it is, then we can start maybe reallocating that money that we had, and it might knock down on that pro forma you're looking at to see what the true cost of this thing is.
Yeah, and what's the plan for,
Yeah.
the plan for the replacements?
yeah, I thought the current work that we were doing was the last phase of it, so I apologize, but I'm not certain what we have reserved or committed in the fund balances for future years.
Yeah.
Are you, Stephen?
Well, no, there's nothing, it's just in the CIP plan.
Yep.
Originally, when we first started this, we put 75,000 for multiple years, not knowing what the ultimate plan would be, and we wanted to at least put some money in there.
Well, somebody gave a report to the board, according to Bentley, that suggested a total cost of 400,000 that would be needed in 5 years. So somebody just took 400 divided by 5 and came up with 80,000 and said put 80 a year.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's that simple.
I think you're right.
And
Okay,
my
that's good
question
news.
is it needed? Because if it's not, it's going to exaggerate your fee analysis and your income analysis.
We'll go back through that.
Okay. Okay, a couple other issues. I just wanted to bring it to your attention, just food for thought, planting a seed. We have sometimes, more frequently than desired, we have problems with the equipment in the boardroom, getting things set up. And this last time, it was clear, because we're often suspicious of has somebody been messing with our equipment. Last time it was pretty evident, because there was a cord dangling from behind the TV and there was a cord draped over the microphone, that somebody was attempting to use the equipment. and interfered with some stuff. And staff spent quite a bit of time getting it reset and to figure out what was wrong. It's very difficult to hold staff accountable when you have a shared facility. So we have HOA meetings, people are coming in from the outside and they're sharing the room. And so I don't know what goes on in here, whether they're messing with the equipment or whether it's staff, I don't know. But I just wanted you to keep that for food for thought, that sometimes things like that, as far as having guests come into your facility when it's not attended, there's nobody here to assist them. And I don't know if it was an HOA, I have no idea. We didn't research it, other than I just know that it's difficult to hold anybody accountable for anything because we have a shared facility. So it's just food for thought.
Why can't we use that? When they have a meeting, we just turn that on and we've got a tape of what they've done.
Yeah, but then it's still administrative burden that you have to go back and watch the tape. Now we have to fix the
Only if
equipment and
somebody
have to go
does
back and review the
You don't have to go back and
review
look
the
at
tape.
it if somebody did something.
Yeah, I'm
don't know what else
Let's
you
just
do.
make sure the people
Yeah.
that are using that
Know about it.
that know, here's your guidelines, here's
Don't
what
touch
you can
anything.
do, here's what you can't do. And if you don't follow those guidelines, there's a fine or what, I don't know.
You don't use the room again.
Not use fine, I know, Tony's told me 100 times, but,
It's just food for thought.
Yeah.
Also.
So I would say just reiterate what they can and cannot do in the, within those meetings.
Okay. Also, at the last board meeting, we had decided to go back to posting the banners for the board meetings. So, we're about to turn over our roadways to Lee County. And those entryways, they have their right-of-way areas up there at our entrances. And so I just wanted to bring it to your attention that in the right-of-way, the Lee County right-of-ways, they do not allow such banners. So we would either have to put them out there and risk somebody coming by and taking them down, or try to find an area out there that's outside of their right-of-way and potentially not on private property. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention, and also that eventually we will be drafting a policy because I think we've talked about this before, that the signage, we don't have a clear policy as far as what staff is to pick up and what staff is to not pick up. And so that's on our list of standard operating procedures. It's on our target list to develop. So I just wanted to bring those two things to your attention before I went out and ordered the banners. Do we proceed and order the banners and stick them out there?
Can we give Randy Searchy a call and just ask him, hey, you're
I
gonna
already
take
did.
these, what did Randy say?
He said that such banners that you're requesting is not allowed in our right-of-way.
Prohibited.
So can you find out,
Answers it.
how about in the context of billboards? Are there any requirements as far as having billboards within the community? And I'm not talking about a huge billboard, I'm talking about.
There is, remember, that came up with Pete Dora years ago about the size, and I think it was an advertising sign, and each developer of property is allowed one 4x8 on his property. As I recall, that was what Pete said that was in our documents. I don't like billboards. I think they look tacky.
I'm just thinking about options.
Well, I had that in my comments I was gonna ask about. What's wrong, because I've already had 2 HOA people call and ask, and boy, somebody's looking at our signs, because they said, what happened to the signs? And their suggestion was, is if we lose the signs or we don't elect to replace them, and it sounds like now it's gonna be very complicated, contact the HOAs, and we simply send them out a notice of our meeting dates in advance and let them have the responsibility of notifying their residents. I know our HOA would do that.
Yeah.
And might say, but I think you've got a problem with the roads now, because all of our 3 main roads are being turned over, and every place that we'd want to have the sign to notify people, that's where we can't do it now.
Well, and I
Yeah.
think with the website, and there's also, April has talked about a better PR and communication strategy, so I think things will come. I think announcing them on our Facebook page, and there's a lot of things we could be doing, and it takes a little time, but, if we can't do the banners, or we spend the money today until they get turned over, what do we tell them? $200 or something?
Well, we just ordered the movie banners, and so those are going up.
How much were they?
They were $90 a piece. And those are a temporary banner, so it's,
See, our problem is our right-of-ways are 150 feet, 75-foot halves. If you put them back off, nobody's gonna see it, so far back off the road. That really is
But
tough.
right now, we don't have an issue with it.
no, not until the roads are turned over. I just wanted to bring it to
2
your
more months.
attention because we've been trying to be proactive with Lee
Right.
County. We've been trying to be proactive and establish a relationship with them so we can report things timely. And also, be proactive with our landscaping, because there were some issues identified on the walkthroughs. And so I reached out to them just to check. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
How can you put the movie banners up then?
Well, right now, it's not turned over, and if we're not looking until February or March,
You got 60
the movie will be,
days.
the movie will be over by then, then I think,
The-
at the rate we're
other-
going.
The other possibility would be the one place in Gateway where most people cross the intersection would be on the northeast corner at Griffin and Gateway Boulevard, but we'd have to probably get permission from whoever owns that 11-acre parcel there to put like a sign or something like that.
Yeah, well, let's just, I say move forward with the movie posters, and maybe we look at some options.
See what the options
Yeah.
are.
What I will check right now, I probably, there's a sign easement, let me go retrieve at the corner, at the southeast corner of Daniels Parkway and Gateway Boulevard. That sign is a sign easement, let me pull it up to see who the grantee is.
A sign easement?
Yes,
I didn't know there was a sign there.
right there, yeah.
I think we're spending an awful lot of time talking about 18th century
Okay.
technology in the 21st century.
Okay, so can do we want to just put it on hold for now, or do you want me to proceed with ordering the banners for the meetings?
I would hold.
Hold, don't hold.
I'd
hold
hold
Okay.
the banners.
All right.
And then,
And also, I made a commitment, we had a resident call in or contact me from Stony Brook. And so I wanted to clarify, back when we made the decision that we were not going to have a tow policy, I wanted to clarify, I know in my memo, I had mentioned in there that it's not just a fun park issue, there's issues, throughout the district that is a concern. And as far as enforcement of the no parking signs and the towing, I just wanted to clarify that was a cognizant decision of the board, that currently the district is not taking any action on the no parking signs in Stony Brook.
That's right.
That was our
That
understanding.
was conscious, not unconscious.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to be sure, I made a commitment that I would clarify that.
And I just want to clarify too, that I asked our CAM, and in the last 2.5 years, we've towed one vehicle, and that was an abandoned car that was in the parking lot, not on Gateway
Well,
District property.
yeah, I think the more the concern is the citations, whether there be fines or what have you, the current enforcement of the no parking signs. I think that is the concern. But our position is that the district is not currently going to enforce their signs on their roads that they own in Stony Brook.
You got it.
Okay, all right, I just wanted to clarify. And that's it for me. Any questions?
I have one question. Maybe it's for Chris later, but could you update us on the natural gas for the heating and the pool? I saw the pictures and.
I'm sure Chris would love
That's
to.
in Chris's report.
Is that in Chris's report?
Yeah, it is.
He can do a much better job than
Kathy
I can do.
Okay.
I have two things,
Sorry.
okay? Mainscape. I had asked that Mainscape be at some of our meetings. Are they gonna be able to come to some of our meetings? I don't feel I should have to go to L and make this like a three-party. I think Mainscape needs to be here to hear
Well,
some of the problems
and-
that I've been given to L.
And I apologize, and I didn't understand that was a direction from the board to have
But I
main.
wanted to know if it was a possibility.
Well, I think, since we pay them $860,000 a year, that we ought to at least ask them to come to the first one and see what kind of response to our questions we get.
I mean,
As long as we take them first.
Say again?
I don't, as long as we take them first, I don't want them to sit here for 4 hours and wait till we
Yeah,
talk. That's
all-
not very
only-
fair.
That's only fair.
and I think what we talked about too is having supervisors are aligned to certain areas, and I would think that'd be a great area, Kathleen, if you, you know,
It's true.
to be able to, to attend the meeting with them, because I think what the ability by sitting down with Mainscape
Those are default.
outside of this meeting really gives you the ability to ask them questions, get a little bit more time to resolving, problems or bringing up concerns. I think it's a better use of time for you to participate in those meetings as opposed to them coming here. They get 5 minutes? But that's just my.
Well, then perhaps we need to, Elle meets with Mainscape for like 3 hours every week during their inspections and their walkthroughs. Perhaps you just might want to participate in that occasionally. Okay. You want to do that?
We're gonna be bringing in a new public works person, so that person might shake all this up anyway.
But that's something that is particularly important for Kathy, and I think if she's wanting to participate in that, that's fine.
Well, not only that, I mean, we did the exercise through our working session where we identified priorities and things that we felt were priorities, and April distributed those out to the board. And what the action that I was anticipating was if there were items that we either had subject matter expertise or were passionate about, that we would align to those priorities. Because again, shortage of staff, if we can, have a little more hands-on responsibility into, some of those areas, it might help push things along. It would also allow us to be more knowledgeable to socialize these items within the supervisors, because a lot of times we don't know it's an issue until it's an issue. So I think that's a great opportunity, and I know that there's certain items that I'm going to be taking on myself. So my action would say, go back to that email. If there's certain things that you feel you want to participate in, just put your name or let April know, hey, put me next to this item.
I'm sure glad you brought that up. I saw that memo, and somehow or other it went to my spam file. I haven't seen it since.
Will you resend that? to
That
the
explains
supervisor?
why I have received no
no.
responses
It would
from
certainly,
anybody.
doing that would weed out these people coming and spending while we grill it. Somebody can meet with them and really bring to the meeting what the issues are instead of sitting there and hashing it for 45
And
minutes.
sometimes it's a matter of just giving some simple direction. It is,
Yeah.
not
I
everything
like
has to
that
come
idea.
back here, so.
I think that'd be more beneficial for you and them,
Now, if you,
and us as a board.
if you identify that there's some issues that have not been resolved and someone needs to come in and provide an update, I have no problem with that.
Yeah.
Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
One other.
I had one other, yes. Okay, it goes back to the signs. What properties are available? Could you send me a list of the properties that are available that belong to Gateway and will not belong to Lee County?
I'm not
There's
following.
nothing that we own on those 3 roads. It's all going to them.
But we do the landscaping.
And in the new contract, we have the responsibility of the sidewalks if we damage them. We have the street lights, street poles, and we have the landscaping, but we
And the
don't,
street sweeping.
nothing else.
The street sweeping.
We don't have street sweeping, that's theirs, if they do it at all. There was no street
But if-
sweeping discussed in that contract.
But if we're responsible
No.
for the landscaping, I don't understand why.
They still get to say what kind of signage goes in their right of ways. We don't have the right to.
Are we talking about our block
Hang it
signs?
in the trees.
She's talking about the signage.
Take over
Wanting to
everything.
put a sign up for the meetings.
Oh.
She's looking for some other place to put a sign.
Yeah, I think that corner at the Griffin and Gateway Boulevard would be our best shot for maximum exposure.
Only because I really did get many ladies that have come to me about that sign, because it is a reminder, and I'm just worried about if there's somewhere, at least I can tell
I've
them
had people come.
that we're looking to put it.
I have it noted that it's just on hold until we do further
Yeah, I
research.
just sent an email with the order booking page for the easement. There's a sign easement, triangular large, as you come into Gateway Boulevard off of Daniels,
Who's it dedicated to us?
the district.
Yeah.
It's for
I mean,
landscaping, signage, irrigation.
We're talking about notifying people when we have meetings.
And nobody shows up.
I mean, what are we gonna get, maybe 5 more people? But they might be watching online, but I think there's a better solution by utilizing technology and things of that nature.
Yeah, I think Bill's right.
So.
Okay. Yes, Kathy?
Can I respond to Supervisor Banks about that?
Yes, ma'am.
That's how I found out about the CDD, was the sign.
Yeah.
So any new resident that wouldn't know, if they see the sign, would ask questions. And that's what I was bringing about when
Yeah.
people were asking me questions about it.
Well, and that's why I think, having a strategy where we're sending information to the HOAs, let the HOAs disseminate it out to, how we do at Stony Brook. I mean, they're sending out emails all the time for.
But not everybody has email or internet access to Stony Brook.
Well, let's just put that on the back burner and we'll try and come up with a solution, but I think we can move on from that. Anything else? April? District manager, anything?
I just kind of want to update you on the bridge loan.
Okay.
We did send out requests to about 20 different banks with the information as to what we were looking for. So far, we have gotten back one official offer letter, and we have about 3 others that we'll probably get back from banks that are interested. So once we get those, I'll put together a summary, kind of like what we did for the meter replacement program, submit it to you guys, and you guys can select a bank, and we can go from there.
Thank you, that sounds great. Utility manager,
Chris Shoemaker with the utility hat. And I'll try to keep this short. I have about 5 status items, and I'm gonna save the irrigation system for last. You asked about Tico's gas. All the boring, all the line is in. They're doing a little restoration and picking flags up and sod and that type. But there's a stub out at the brewery right next door and also at the pool. So at this point, it's just up to us to set the account up and then hook into the heaters.
wonderful.
But the lines are there, and we went through the whole process, broke 3 little irrigation lines, didn't hit anything else, and I'm gonna come back to you probably at the next meeting and just lay out what our expenses were on it as far as engineering, inspection, also the ground penetrating radar, doing the locates there and some of the parts we bought for the project, thank goodness we didn't use. And also take a look at Mr. Rod Senior's projections, because when the TICO issue came up and he was spearheading it, he did a return on investment calculation. So I'm gonna look at the actual cost of the pool and the new gas, and we'll see where Mr. Senior was on his projection.
Why don't you wait until we have a year of gas usage and see how.
Oh, yeah, we will, and it's so seasonal, but it would be interesting to see, but I think he's probably pretty close. But all in all, it worked out real well, and it really just took everybody working together to make it happen. US Water, they've got about 14 meters to finish, and they're all big headaches, but they came by today, we're reconning the meters, and Friday and Saturday, tomorrow and Saturday, we'll be out installing, and then next week. And these are like the school meters, large scale ones that will have to come in on Saturdays, and like the Comcast building and some places that are populated. Pond 104, we have a start date to finish the work out there, January 25th. Worked closely with the property owners there and came up with some agreements with them and really looked at things in detail, like where are we gonna put the porta potty, where are we gonna stage the construction materials, how many contractors' vehicles are gonna be allowed on the streets, the restoration and coming in. So we addressed that with the property owners. It did take a great amount of time, but I think it'll be worth it in the end with them. Our irrigation well evaluation's about wrapped up, and we are gonna be putting a new motor in well 5. It's about a $3,000 expense, but it was just shot. Couple add-ons, State Road 82 widening, got a construction start date of April 20th. So for those of you that like to.
April 20th?
Yes, and that's contractors on the ground.
This year?
Yes.
Wow.
And where are they starting?
Well, they're gonna start just by Publix, where they finished up, and then move
Well, I
this
mean,
way. But don't be
go
tearing.
that way.
I'm
That's the
happy.
only way we can go.
I'm happy, but I mean, wow, that's.
Yeah, so make plans, especially for next winter, because they'll still be working on it then.
Next two.
Also mentioned to you, I talked to a professor over at Florida Gulf Coast University Engineering School, and next week Dr. Kim's going to be coming over to meet with 3 students, and we're going to put together a scope of work to have them help us with our GIS expansion, and also help them get their senior project done. And what we're looking at right now is taking one subdivision and having them input every single type of utility facility in there, but on their side, let them do a water model, a hydraulic model of that system for irrigation.
That's
et cetera.
fantastic.
But,
Good.
yeah, it's cooperating with the American Water Works Association, with the university and ourselves, and interns do take a lot of time, but I think we'll be able to get some solid work out of them and maybe start a continuous relationship with them.
We'll take staff any way we can get it.
That's great.
So-
Yeah, that's awesome.
And, yeah, they're nice people. And the last thing that I was gonna do is give you a status report on the irrigation system and where we are and where we kinda need to go with it. But at your last meeting, you approved $45,000 for a new pump, new skid, and what it takes to put a pump out there. And just briefly, from a historical perspective, in June of 2015, Lee County sent a letter to Gateway. It's not very flattering. It just says the county has concern regarding the integrity of the district's reuse pumping station. And it goes into detail about issues they see as not operable. And of course, that's their only way to dispose of their reclaimed water. So, and the following month, Scott sent a letter back to them and basically thanking them for the letter and talking about projects that they're going to address, the district will, to take care of the county's concerns. And this included replacement of the programmable logic controller, the variable speed drives, replacement of the SCADA system, disconnection of the hydropneumatic tank, installation of that 20-inch line that now goes out to Gateway. And the bottom line is, we're gonna spend $1.1 million upgrading the system, which they did, and all these projects have been completed. However, one item on there, replacing gate valves and check valves, that part was not done. And that has about a $30,000 price tag to it. And they also talked about replacing one pump with a jockey pump, which they did, and refurbishing 3 pumps, and one of which was refurbished. And the pumps that are out there that are being used as split case are basically 1988 vintage, and a couple of them were rebuilt in 2005, so they're well past their useful life, and they've been rebuilt a couple times. So what I'm planning on doing is coming back at the next meeting as we go through our costs and reprioritizing the budget, but ask for the money, which is approximately $28,000 to furnish and install 10 valves on the system, which is 2 on each end of each pump. And the reason is those valves are inoperable, they really aren't working. So if we want to work on one pump, we have to
Shut
take
the whole thing.
everything down.
It's so stupid.
And also with those valves not working, you get a heck of a hydraulic hammer when those pumps are switching around. And I'll use the analogy, we're destroying a $30,000 pump for a $1,500 valve. But it just
Yeah.
eats away at them. But I'll be coming back. We purchased 3
Make
check
that
valves.
up on volume.
And we purchased 3 check valves to be installed. We haven't put them in when we do this other work, and that's $1,500 for the installation. And then I'm going to see if I can move enough money around to get one more brand new pump. And that way we would have 2, and those 2 pumps will just about take care of our demand at this time. But definitely I'll come back to you with the valves to put in the system and some minor improvements. And that pump was ordered. We had one with a short lead time, which is 5 weeks. So when it comes in, we'll get to work on it. But if you ever have one of these pumps go down and you want a new one, 10 to 12 weeks to get one. And it's not like you can say, well, can you hurry up and ship it? They literally build
not
them
on the
to order.
shelf.
So if we ran into a problem, it could be a big problem.
Margaret, the one, a little bit confusing, Chris, you mentioned the hydromatic tank.
Right.
That it was done, it's still there. So that was one that was to be gone. That hydropneumatic tank is long since not being used, and it just sits over there. We want to try to find somebody that would want to buy that, or I
Yeah,
don't know
we're-
how we dispose of materials
You
like
could
that.
declare it a surplus, and then you could, offer.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
we
have
will.
value.
Certainly
You
not
might find
functional.
some, it doesn't have much value because it would cost as much to move it, but you might find a mobile home park or a nursery that needs it
Could
for a
use it.
surge tank for irrigation. We also have a
Pump.
spiffy 3-phase compressor out there that fed air into that tank, that we'll put that up for sale also.
Do we still have a boat?
We still have the boat, if you'd like us to get rid of that too. Haven't used it, but we may have a need for it.
Get to Area 9.
Yeah, there you go.
Anybody else have any questions for Chris?
Just one. You make the point on the gas and the itemization of the costs. I would hope we then take that to the next step, which we develop a new criteria manual deal, then the next time they pay a fee to come into Gateway, and we can base it on a per cost or per foot basis. So if you end up with $10,000 of staff time and they put in 10,000 feet, the next time they come in, it's $1 a foot, whatever the number is.
Yeah, and I don't know what their plans are as far as if the communities want to hook up, because you have the trunk lines in there now, but I assume it would just be calling.
I was gonna ask you
We
about that,
need
if
to
there was a
generate a-
plan to offer.
Well, remember
to
the last time
communities
we
on
talked to them, they put us over the barrel that it's not in our documents, but we can put it in there pretty quick.
Yeah, and I think if you had enough interest of residents, went to the HOA, and the HOA said, can you bring the gas in?
Our HOA is interested.
Yeah, I mean, who would?
And just I'll touch briefly on Mainscape too. We had them here a week ago, and they had a contingent of 8 people from their national to their state level and we had some very good discussions, some very frank discussions about services. And one thing, their contract will come up for renewal in March, which is, I believe, the 5th or 6th year of a renew. I'll say that probably as a staff, we were remiss that we should have brought it up a few months ago and said, if you're happy, if not, we'll go out to bid and you can make the decision at that time. But they have 1 more year left on that contract. And now is a good time to talk to them because they were very attentive.
Wait till Kathleen gets on them.
And one thing we were gonna put into the new contract, and it's kinda getting in the weeds, but they use that property in the rear of the building and have been without any charge, and of course take water without any charge. And if you look back there, you'll see they've cleaned a bunch of it up, and the equipment that they need to maintain here, we're gonna let them leave that and a couple of the mowers. But as far as them taking over the whole rear of the building like they had done, they were getting a little
Yeah.
comfortable. And also, we're gonna put a meter on the water supply, so at least we know where that water's going.
We'd be happy to rent them space if they need additional space.
Well, they, and it's just since their contract, they've come and used it as a base operation, and we aren't getting anything out of it, and there's nothing in the contract about providing it to them. It's just been a handshake deal, but I wanna formalize that in the next contract amendment.
I like that idea.
But that's all I have.
Okay. Any questions for Chris?
Nope.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Chris.
Thank you, Chris.
Supervisor comments. I'll start down with Supervisor Flaherty. Again?
Yes. Remember I was talking about communication last time? And I did get in contact with Lifestyle, Daniels Corridor, and they are more than agreeable to put a little article in their paper. They just wanna know about what size. And I also got in contact with a website from Heather that you gave me. And then today, in my mail, I got a little thing from Next Door Gateway District. I
Say
don't know.
again?
Next Door Gateway District. I
Oh,
don't know.
that's a little brochure.
Yeah, I don't know if that's anything that we might be interested. They did say they put in little information. So, if you want, I could, but I would have to have someone edit my work. I always don't like to edit my own work. Write a little article for all these people, after our meetings. And it would only be once a month, so it'd have to be a very general summary. It wouldn't be anything specific.
Just a summary of the things that the district's working on.
This district's working on, our
I don't
e-
think
I think it's a great
email
idea.
at all.
And our email addresses, I would put in like every once in a while, so if people did have interest to contact us.
And we should
And
be.
the meeting dates.
And the
For
meeting
the next
dates, I
meeting.
would put the meeting dates in. I would put them in for a couple of months because, being that, actually, I missed all the deadlines, just as I was emailing them, they missed them all, so they won't go in for another month practically. So, but, if there's no objection, I could write an article just to
I
summarize.
think that's a wonderful idea.
Good idea.
Those first
Thank-
5 projects would be a good start on the lakes to let everybody know what's coming in March.
Okay,
And when State Road 82 is gonna start to work on, that might be a good point to put in.
And the high school stuff would be good.
Lot to write about.
yeah, well, they just, you know, I can't even guarantee they'll put everything I say in there, because, they said there's,
space,
of
yeah.
space, right? And they had asked me how much space, and I said, well, as much as you wanna give us, I suppose.
Well, I mean, honestly, a great idea is once we get the website up, you know, we have the space for news.
Transfer
I
it
would,
over.
I would call it board shorts or, you know, just something, you know, just a high-level summary of, you know, things. So I think it's a good start.
I think it's a
Absolutely.
great idea, Kathy, and thank you. Thank you for being willing to do it. Thank you. Anything else?
No, that was it. I have everything else checked off.
Okay.
They were out here asking those questions.
Mr. Guy?
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. I only had one item, which came to my attention while we were discussing State Route 82, and I wanted to ask the attorney if he'd gotten any response to his letter to the city about what they're doing with those,
Utilities,
yes, thank you.
from a long time ago.
It's been a while.
A couple of months ago.
I've heard nothing. I don't know if Chris, if you had any conversation, you had some meetings, I think, with him subsequently or not. I'm not.
Yeah, we met with the city and we're trying to explore with them possibilities of interconnects, you know, for water and sewer. And I basically broached it as an emergency situation. Why don't we put these together? And they kind of backed off and said, well, if you guys needed the water, I don't think we have enough to supply Gateway out here. So it was kind of, but they didn't bite on the interconnect at all.
Have they changed their
So-
plans, I guess?
No, and those lines will be right out in front. You know, and that's what I was saying, why they're, you know, exposed, why not do the interconnects and some meters and valves the way we do with the county, and then if you need emergency service, or if they needed it, we could push water or sewer capacity their way, but they backed off it. They said, well, if you wanna bring in some demand calculations, we'll look at it, but right now, we're not interested. And I think it's because their lack of supply out here. They did do a temporary, agreement with Lehigh Acres when they were having issues with their water plant and well, but it was about 7 months, and when that 7 months was over, it was shut.
That's all, thank you.
I had two. One is if we can address, we've kicked the can down the road on that FPL fence out there. I keep hearing about that. Can we send somebody over there?
The gate?
Not the gate, the fence itself, our posts that we put in, those, I mean, it's an eyesore.
Just
Straighten them and do something to clean that. It's right across the street. As you go out to Griffin Drive, right straight across, there's that ugly-looking white picket post. We put it in. It's our fence.
Oh, we did?
Yes,
The fence with a cable?
yes,
Yeah.
that's ours.
All we
We
need to
did
do
that.
is have somebody straighten the
Straighten the post and make it look decent. It's tacky. The other one is that
I mean, you
this
can
is.
get that nylon white picket fence. It's not that expensive to run along there if you absolutely had to. If you wanted it to look better.
If I was gonna do that, I'd put in a nice decorative, 4 or 5 foot high, regular fence like, WCI is putting in over there in our neighborhood, but that's expensive, that's $20 a foot. Just straightening the post would make it look better. The other one is something that Chris and I have talked about that's come up and still, burns in my crawl, is this deal at Stony Brook. We've been seeing some of the pictures that are coming out of the lake improvement project, the storm sewer deal up there. And I don't know, Margaret, you two live up there, have seen those, you show them with the riprap? No. It's disgusting. It is absolutely disgusting, and I guess my deal is that we had a run-in on this about 6, 7 years ago when we tried to get as-bills on that, and I know the frustration you and I don't know how many times we went out there and looked. I guess the only thing I'm saying is that when the new boy in town, Lennar, comes in, paybacks are going to be difficult. They gotta toe the line. They gotta do a lot better than what they did to us at Stony Brook. That's just not right.
I agree.
That's all I
agree.
had.
Doug?
No, I'm good.
I didn't have anything either, so on that note,
I motion.
the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is that continuity?
I don't know. Somebody asked that question, and I guess they're close. They're getting close.
I saw you try to make that move. That was impressive.
Thursday and Friday.
Ask that, so you put up private property, correct? I can ask.
Who is?
It's good, because of lots of.
District meeting. That's it. We just go there, right? It's in Lehigh, so I just.
And I have always had this idea, like even when you're coming down, like towards Stony Brook, you've got all that on the right-hand side. It's really easy flow for drainage.
I am, thank you.
Now, wait a minute.
Really nice.
That doesn't include
Utility
utility.
at some way you
Even
put a sign,
utility,
you know.
how do they get it?
Like a marquee.
So if we have to go in and serve and provide, upgrade up.
Well, yeah, no, I just, like I said, I
And,
didn't want
no,
to.
that's not what I'm getting to, is that if we have to upgrade the system to be able to accommodate them, so that means we pay for the capital? I don't think that's true, guys.
Well, it's a great,
Okay, I could go with that, but what we gotta do is we gotta do an impact on them to figure out what the upgrade is and tell them that's included in your cost. But the other one is, I don't think, with the exception of maybe, irrigation, I think water and sewer we're okay with them on, because they're gonna have to put in a pump station. And we've got a force main out there big enough to handle it. The real issue is that we wanna work with them on that, drainage. We could use that water, and I think we got a better chance of taking that water through Magnolia than we taking it across the street in Hampton Park. I think Hampton Park sized that 60-inch across Gateway Boulevard, not on that 50 acres. Not on that 50 acres.
I understand.
Oh, we can't have that.
When I first got involved,
Yeah. It's ridiculous. They start that at about 1:30. Or they got another option.